for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat.
Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Weeknights on GB News from 6 p.m. You'll always get drama.
Please stop, Michelle.
I know, yeah.
Please stop.
Should I just shut up?
Romance.
You like me, I like you. There you go.
You are. Well, don't tell anybody.
Adventure.
Etc.
That's the whole point.
And action.
Sergeant, the bickering, my superstar panel, they're already at it. They're fighting. It's going to be quite a show.
Only on GB News. Britain's watching.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Fridays from 8, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, good afternoon and welcome to GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. And for the next few hours, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me for the next hour, going head-to-head, is GB News senior political commentator Nigel Nelson, and also member of Reform and former MEP Ben Habib. We'll be going head-to-head in a couple of moments' time. But then joining me at between 4 to 6 is author and broadcaster Christian Hamilton, and also broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly. But before all that, let's get your latest news headlines.
Very good afternoon to you. It's 3 o'clock. I'm Aaron Armstrong in the GB Newsroom. The Met Police says it's aware of new footage showing Conservative staff partying during lockdown and joking about COVID restrictions, and is considering it. Michael Gove, the Levelling Up Secretary, has apologised for the unacceptable behaviour. In the footage obtained by The Mirror, Tory staff can be heard joking about and ignoring social distancing rules that were imposed by the government at the height of the pandemic. 2 of the 24 people at the Christmas party were named in Boris Johnson's resignation honours list. Mr Gove told us disciplinary action has already been taken.
The reason why those steps were taken was to reduce the spread of the disease, in order to make sure that the pressures on the NHS were manageable, in order to make sure that we could treat people who were very ill. So, again, the actions here are deeply distressing, and I can only apologise to people that individuals behaved in this way. My understanding is that there was an investigation into the party when the photograph emerged, and people were disciplined.
Meanwhile, MPs will debate any possible punishment for Boris Johnson tomorrow after he was found to have misled Parliament over Partygate. The Privileges Committee has recommended the former Prime Minister should face a 90-day suspension had he not already resigned in advance of his judgment. It's understood his supporters are being encouraged to abstain from the vote, but former Brexit Secretary David Davis told Camilla Tominey he will support the committee, saying its findings are clear.
One of the things about Parliament is it's the highest court in the land.
Yeah.
That creates a problem when you're coming to privileges. What's that problem? It's like having a trial in a village. Everybody knows everybody.
Yeah.
Nobody is entirely unbiased.
How do they know his own mind at the time?
They don't have to. They don't, what they know is what he knows.
Yeah.
If you go to a party, you know it was a party. You don't need an advisor to tell you.
Nicola Sturgeon's maintained she's innocent of any wrongdoing after being questioned by police investigating SNP finances last weekend. Scotland's former First Minister spoke as she returned home for the first time since being arrested and released without charge.
You know, I can't say very much just now. What I will say is reiterate the statement I issued last Sunday. I am certain that I have done nothing wrong. I intend to be back in Parliament in the early part of the week. I'll make myself available for questions then, obviously within the constraints that I am referring to right now. For now, I intend to go home, catch up with some family. I know I'm a public figure, I accept what comes with that, but I'm also a human being that's entitled to a bit of privacy.
Rishi Sunak's facing a fourth by-election following the resignation of a former Tory MP. David Warburton, who had the whip suspended last April, has stepped down from his Somerton and Frome seat following accusations of sexual misconduct and cocaine use. He's the fourth Conservative MP in 8 days to resign, following announcements by Boris Johnson, Nigel Adams and Nadine Dorries. The number of migrants entering the UK in small boats via the English Channel this year has surpassed 10,000. According to Home Office figures, 374 people were detected making the journey yesterday. Crossings have increased recently as the weather's improved, but the number this year is still below the equivalent at this point last year. Almost 46,000 migrants crossed the Channel in 2022. The UK has pledged an extra £16 million to boost Ukraine's cyber defences. That's in addition to £6.35 million promised last year. The government says it's to help Ukraine better defend itself from critical infrastructure attacks from Russia. The Prime Minister will also use a summit this week to urge investors and businesses to step up their support for the country's economic recovery. The counter-offensive against Russia continues in the south and the east of Ukraine. Thunder, lightning and heavy rain are moving across the UK, leading to concerns of flash flooding. The Met Office is predicting wind and hail with yellow warnings for thunderstorms in place across the majority of England, Wales and Northern Ireland until midnight. It could lead to a month's worth of rain in just a few hours. It's as a result of recent warm weather, which is set to continue today in most places with temperatures in the mid to high 20s. And Prince William has vowed to tackle homelessness by building social housing on some of his own land. The Prince of Wales told The Times that ending the plight of hidden homelessness in the UK has been a lifelong ambition. He's also expressed frustration at the government, councils and charities. He says they're managing homelessness rather than preventing it. Some of the details of the 5-year plan will be announced next month. More as it happens here on GB News. Now it's back to Nana.
Hello, good afternoon. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua, and over the next hour, I'll be going head-to-head with my panel. Joining me today is GB News senior political commentator Nigel Nelson and also member of Reform and former MEP Ben Habib. They'll be going head-to-head in a clash of minds. Here's what else is coming up. Is it the end for the SNPs? They need to cut loose Nicola Sturgeon. Former SNP leader and First Minister of Scotland, Nicola Sturgeon, has gone home for the first time since she was arrested without charge after she was interrogated for over 7 hours by detectives as part of the wider investigation into the SNP's finances. Sturgeon says that she's done nothing wrong, but what does this probe into the SNP's finances mean for the future of the party? And are Labour just as bad as the Tories? We'll be asking that in a couple of moments' time as well. The former civil servant and ethics chief, Sue Gray, has found that has been in breach of impartiality rules when she held talks to join Sir Keir Starmer's Labour Party as his head of staff. So are Labour just as bad as the Tories? And is there a housing crash on the way? Now, this comes as the rising interest rates have drastically created a 4.5% increase, with many anticipating that these could reach up to 6% by the end of the year, which means that some home buyers could see their borrowing power drastically reduced by £77,000. So how do we deal with all of this, and who's to blame? And then is it time to bring back capital punishment? Earlier this week, the parole board announced that double child killer Colin Pitchfork is allowed to be released subject to conditions. This is despite Pitchfork being recalled to prison due to concerning his behaviour. He was showing, I'm asking, should we bring back the death penalty? And are teachers being irresponsible in our children's safeguarding and welfare? This comes as Chief Rabbi has told schools that parents should not be told if their child comes out as trans, because it could cause a safeguarding risk, as teachers may not know how parents could react to the news. So what do you think? Do you think we're putting our kids at risk? That's coming up in the next hour. Tell me what you think on everything we're discussing. Email gbviews@gbnews.com or tweet me at GBNews. So welcome on board. I'm Nana Akua. It's just coming up to 9 minutes after 3 o'clock. We're going head-to-head this hour, and our first story up is this one. It's former SNP leader Nicola Sturgeon. She said that she's certain she's done nothing wrong after returning home for the first time since her arrest last Sunday. Yes, you remember that. We broke it on this show. Now, she was questioned for over 7 hours by detectives during her arrest, part of a wider investigation into their finances at the SNP. However, she was released and she was not charged, but she remains adamant that she's done nothing wrong, while saying that she's now going to spend time to catch up with her family. So does this signal the end and the dissemination of the SNP? And perhaps Hamza Youssef should look to cut Nicola Sturgeon out of the party. Well, let's see what my head-to-headers think of that. Joining me, Ben Habib and also Nigel Nelson. Ben Habib, I'll start with you.
Well, the story behind Nicola Sturgeon is £600,000 that was given to the party by various donors to mount campaigns for a second referendum. And the question that none of us have asked is, if she is innocent of having misappropriated these funds, which I think is the allegation being made, or that's the concern that's being raised, there's someone else in the SNP that's taken the money, because the money's gone missing. A camper van was born, cash has gone astray. So, the SNP are clearly in the crosshairs of questionability, if I can say that, at the very least.
But what do you think in terms of regard to the party itself? Because now all of that's happening, it's all under investigation, so we can't really speculate. But we look at this and how it plays out as you watch it from the outskirts of it, so from here in England watching it and from other parts of the country looking at that. How do you think this
well, for people who actually examine the SNP and how they've given effect to government in Scotland, it should be pretty quickly self-evident that they're hopeless in what they set out to do. The schooling system in Scotland is behind the other 3 nations of the United Kingdom. Their health service hasn't hit any of the targets they set themselves back in 2012. They've been complete proponents of shutting down North Sea, when actually this was a fantastic, valuable resource that the Scots would have had, but for their virtue signalling. And every minority interest right has been championed by the SNP. They've wrapped themselves in a flag of virtuous correctitude, if you like, and they've neglected governance. And now we find that £600,000 has gone astray. And then on top of that, we have the visual, and I can't rid my mind of this, Hamza Youssef getting up in Holyrood and bemoaning the fact that there are lots of white people in office. Well, the last time I looked, the vast majority of people in Scotland were white. And so you have a party that I don't like the word woke because it means lots of different things to lots of different people, but they champion woke at the exclusion to the detriment of good governance. They make their policies up through virtue signalling. That's the whole thing that they represent, virtue signalling for minority rights, and yet they have a financial situation that at the very least brings up the integrity of their management, if not an outright crime. So, I mean, I think they should never have been anywhere near office in the first place, and I hope this is the end of it, and I hope we never have to see Nicola Sturgeon again.
Well, obviously nothing has been proven. It's still a live investigation,
That's right.
so we wait with bated breath to see what the outcome is. But Nigel, what do you think?
Well, I mean, the one point there is that the Scots keep re-electing an SNP government. So this is a matter for the Scots. The fact they do that shows that they're not as unhappy as Ben might be with what is going on within government there. And no, I don't think it's the end of the party. No matter what happens to Nicola Sturgeon, the party is bigger than one person. I think that they're now well entrenched there. They're going to lose support. I mean, this is a scandal which will cost them members. An awful lot have left already. The £600,000 that is in question was given by ordinary people. It was ordinary supporters, so it's their money, not some big donor who can well afford it. So it'll cause them problems. That'll help Keir Starmer. I'd imagine he'll pick up a number of MPs there, perhaps as many as 20. But when it comes down to the SNP as a party, they're still there. I think they'll carry on, and still they will be pushing for independence, which is what really keeps them going.
But do you think the appetite for independence is still there in Scotland, though?
I think it's been delayed, and I think that this has made things difficult to actually progress the campaign. But the SNP don't exist without independence. I mean,
without the move towards independence.
Yes, not without independence, indeed.
In fact, if you give them independence, that could be the end of the SNP, because it would reveal them for the useless bunch of charlatans that they are.
Well, I mean, we'll see. The 2014 vote, things got a bit wobbly. The people who supported independence was a lot higher, and obviously now that Scotland has suffered because of the Brexit vote. Now that we've left the EU, which Scotland wanted to remain, I mean, you know, the figures are 62% of Scots wanted to remain compared to just 30%.
But they also chose to be part of the United Kingdom. So if you're one as part of the United Kingdom, then that's how it works.
Well, I didn't say the vote was unfair. Yeah. I'm just saying that if you had lived in Scotland, Scotland as a whole wanted to remain in the EU. As circumstances have changed, therefore there should be another independence vote.
But here's the other lie. Can I just quickly say this? Here's the other lie. Nicola Sturgeon, the SNP, champion independence. And yet that's not what they're promising the Scottish people. What they're actually going to deliver, if they ever get that vote, is leaving the United Kingdom for the European Union. It's not independence. They're just changing the nature of their allegiance. That's what they're doing.
I think in Scotland they see that rather differently.
Well, they may see that differently, but that is the reality of it.
That is the reality. That's what they promised.
Well, listen, if you've just joined us, what's your thoughts on that? GBNews@gbnews.com or tweet me at GBNews. Now, let's have a look at this one, because are Labour just as bad as the Tories? Now, former top senior civil servant and ethics, Sue Gray, remember her? 50 Shades of Sue Gray. She's been found to have breached impartiality rules when she held quiet talks with the Labour Party when there were plans to make her Sir Keir Starmer's new Chief of Staff. Now, I can remember when she was questioned, when not her was questioned, but actually Keir Starmer was questioned on LBC, and I've got to put it out there for Rory for asking her the direct question as to when he actually approached her. Now, Cabinet Secretary Simon Case and the government's most senior lawyer signed off an assessment which found Sue Gray had fallen short of the standards laid out by the Civil Service Code and of her employment contract when she had talks which were taking place between her and the Labour Party. So are the Labour Party just as bad as the Tories when it comes to hypocrisy and failing to reach the standards that we expect our public servants to be in? I'm going to start with you, Nigel Nelson.
Yeah, well, the first thing is this is a leaked report. We haven't seen the final version. There's no real conclusion right at the end of it about what they think should happen to her. But they do suggest she might have been sacked if they'd known about these things earlier.
Exactly.
What her offence is, and it doesn't compare with Partygate, her offence is...
well, no, but she was looking into Partygate, and yet whilst doing something that doesn't seem...
Not while it was going on. She did look into Partygate and produced her report. All this happened after that.
But that's the debate, isn't it, Nigel?
Well, no,
she was
we
talking
don't
to
know.
Labour back in late 2021. That's the allegation. At a time when, actually, she was also considering the position of Boris Johnson in Partygate.
Well, what they've both said is that they weren't talking to each other while that Partygate report
Well, that's what they said.
was going on. Yeah, OK, well, I'm taking them at their word. However, there is a breach of the Civil Service Code here on the basis that it does look like Sue Gray didn't tell her bosses that she was meeting the opposition. And one of the Civil Service Code rules is you must declare the fact you are meeting opposition MPs. So she has. So if this is right, if the report is right, she has breached the code. Doesn't mean that Keir Starmer has breached the code just by actually meeting her.
But he would have known the rules, right? So he would know the rules. He's quite a litigious, very, precise man.
What he wouldn't have known is whether or not she was going to tell somebody that they'd had a meeting.
Well, that's irrelevant.
So there's a lot of ifs and buts in the middle of all this.
If you're breaking the rules or doing something against that you shouldn't be doing, you might tell somebody, you might not, but you're still breaking the rules. And Keir Starmer would have known the rules.
And at the very least, offering employment at a time when she was adjudicating something that involved the opposition was bound to skew her interest, was bound to skew her mind, and he would have known that, just at a human level. He's talking to her about giving her a job while she's passing judgment on Boris Johnson and others.
It's not while, it's after.
No, but Nigel, but that's the point, that's the allegation. And it doesn't pass the smell test. It really doesn't pass the smell test.
Well, I mean, in the event that she was having those meetings with Keir Starmer while she was doing the investigation into Boris Johnson, I would agree. But on the basis that she wasn't, I think the two things are completely separate.
But she should have... I mean, look, the optics are very bad. She should have known...
Oh, the optics are bad, I agree with that.
She should have known that. I mean, she's a sensible human being, so is Keir Starmer. He should have known as well.
And she declined to cooperate with the investigation that the Cabinet Office set out, which brings a whole load of other questions. She's obviously nervous about something, isn't she? Otherwise, she would have opened up and been frank about the position. I'm afraid it is kettles and pots. And without wishing to support Nigel's position on this, because I don't, Nigel, I think it's completely wrong that she was... I think it's wrong that she joined the Labour Party, frankly, after having had such a pivotal position in bringing down a sitting Prime Minister. But having said that, Simon Case is no angel himself. Simon Case, who heads up the Cabinet Office and signed off this report, has been implicated in Partygate, he's been implicated in bullying and a whole host of other things. Simon Case should never be in the news. His job is actually to guide the Cabinet away from icebergs, and he seems to be involved in just about every iceberg that comes across, Number 10's bow. And so it's kettles and pots, they're all at it.
But I mean, look, we saw this video as well of them, the civil servants appearing to just making light of the rules. I think we've got the clip that we can play to show those who are watching on TV. If you're listening on radio, it is, of course, the civil servants who are just enjoying themselves and actually making light of the whole issue.
The video...
Tory civil servants, these ones, but civil servants cross all platforms anyway, so they may have...
Yeah, I think the video you're talking about, they weren't civil servants, they were Conservative Party staffers who were actually doing that, because they were Sean Bailey's campaign staff when he was going for the
mayoralty.
The mayoralty of London.
Are they not seen as civil servants?
No,
they're not seen as civil servants.
Those people are Tory staffers.
This is such a bad video. I thought it was a spoof when I first saw it.
Look at them, and it said, look, it says, as long as we don't stream this live. What did it say on there? I missed.
Oh my goodness!
So they're actually dancing. What you've got is two people who are dancing badly. One in what it looks like a bad Christmas.
It looks like one of those clips from Ricky Gervais's The Office, doesn't it?
Is one of the things.
And it sounds like that's what was going on there. It's exactly like Ricky Gervais's The Office.
It looks pretty boring, but at the end of the day, they were people.
But I'm not sure there's any comparison to that with Sue Gray. I mean, here we've got people who are quite patently breaking the rules, committing an offence on screen. That's not quite the same thing as the Sue Gray thing.
But Simon Case knew about the quiz, for example, that took place in December 2020 in Number 10. I mean, Simon Case is at the centre of a lot of this controversy, which is why I say, it's kettles and pots. And And that, I suppose, is the vulnerability of a political system. If you have politicians policing themselves and the civil service all amongst each other, you rely on them to have integrity. You rely on self-policing. And it seems to me that the whole organism of government, including those who support elected officials, are basically rotten. You know, that's what I see. And can I just give one example of why I think they're rotten?
We've got to... We'll come back.
Yeah, okay.
Wait for this wonderful piece. We'll wait for that after the break. I can't wait to hear what he has to say. Listen, stay with us. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. Going head-to-head with me, Ben Habib and Nigel Nelson. Stay tuned. There's more to come after this.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app, and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, this is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. Keep all those messages coming in. Before the break, we're discussing whether Labour are just as bad as the Tories. And let's see what you've been saying. Caroline says, I don't see why party organisers should get away without being fined £10,000 and a criminal record as a lot of the public were. It's a good point. Lenny says, well, it seems grossly unfair. Boris has taken the push for other members of the party who did not respect the place they worked in. Very true as well. Helen points out that Labour don't get scrutinised enough. Sue Gray, Starmer and their party are worse than the Tories. And Martin says, how many policies have been ditched by Starmer in the past 2 weeks? I've lost count. I can't trust them. So true. I mean, he's just ditched. He's talking about something else at 2030. I think he's talking about solar panels. That'll probably go soon. Mike says both Gray and Starmer are liars. Yes, that's what he says. Well, you know, some of the things that Starmer has said with regard to Beergate, I mean, that was things he said weren't true on that.
But the police exonerated him.
Yeah, but they weren't true. So, for example, he said that there were only a few people attending.
And there were 22
there
or
were 22 or something. He said that it was an impromptu gathering. Turns out there was a memo, so it was obviously planned. So he said that Angela Rayner wasn't there, and she was. I mean...
But it wasn't an offence.
Yeah, but it's not true, is it? So that's a lot of people are saying is they're lying, and that is a lie, and I'd like to say it is.
Yeah, and, you know, why were they drinking copious amounts of Peroni? I think that's what he had in his hand, a bottle of Peroni, and ordering in curry. I mean, it doesn't sound like a work event to me. It sounds like they had their feet up at 7 p.m. after the work had finished and were just having a jolly.
But the police decided it was a work event.
Yeah, the Durham police, aren't they a Labour constabulary? I thought they were as well. Well, listen, let's move on to this one, though, because this is affecting a lot of people. And if you've got a home and you've bought a house and you've got a mortgage, you'll know all about this one. Home buyers, they're feeling the pinch as rising interest rates could be set to increase up to 6%. Now, in my day, that was perfectly normal. 6%, 5%, you got a mortgage, it was fine. But we've experienced 0% and 1%, so we got used to that. This means that obviously their borrowing power could be reduced by worked it out at about £77,000, which could make it far more difficult for first-time buyers to get onto the housing ladder. Rising inflation and the war in Ukraine have also meant that household bills have increased, piling even more pressure onto households. So is the housing bubble about to burst? I'm going to start with you, Ben Habib. Is it about to burst, do you think?
Well, I think it is. I think this is a massively... it's a massive bad step for the United Kingdom, for the economy, and for everyone who lives in the United Kingdom. And, you know, you're quite right. We used to be well used to 6% interest rates, but the ratio between house prices and salaries back then was basically 3 to 4 times at most. And when it got to 4 times, you knew that the housing market was getting overheated. When interest rates went down to nil, people all assumed that's how it would remain. And house prices went up to 6, 7, 8 times annual salaries. So house price inflation was massive in the 12 years after we did QE. And we talk about inflation now, but actually we've had asset price... quantity after we printed money to save the banks back in 2009, whenever it was. And we've had massive asset price inflation as a result of that. And now what we're having is the bursting of that bubble. Interest rates have gone up dramatically. People will not be able to afford to pay their interest on their mortgages. That is an absolute dead certainty. And that is going to knock into the banking system because they're going to default on their loans. And when they default on their loans, we're then going to get a banking crisis. And I think...
But they're not helping themselves because they haven't put the interest rate up on savings accounts. So they are now creaming the profits of, what is it, 44 billion?
Yeah, I know.
So they've been creaming off the people, actually ripping off customers.
Yeah, and there's an investigation.
Absolutely. We bailed them out. And at the top of that, there's some of the earnings of some of the people at the top of these banks, 3-point-something million at the head of Lloyd's, I think it is. I'll have a look at it.
Well, I think it's a really critical point you make. You know, the banks got us into the financial credit crunch of the 2008 GFC, as it's now called, Great Financial Crisis. It was the banks that got us there, and actually it was the banks that were bailed out, and it was the banks' executives who were rewarded for then this massive asset price inflation, including in their own share prices, etc., post their rescue. And here they are again now at the forefront of the creation of the problem and not passing on the higher interest rates.
They're not passing on the higher interest rates, and they're making profits out of this. And they're people like Charlie Nunn, he's the boss at Lloyd's Bank. He's on £3.7 million. Their net income for the bank is 13.1 billion, and we bailed them out to the tune of 20 billion.
Yeah,
Nigel.
I mean, I think that I agree with every point that Ben has made, which must be a first, wasn't it? Apart from perhaps your last one, where it might all lead to a bank collapse. I think what has happened is that...
Like a crash, a housing crash.
Yeah, I mean, both, yes. If there's a collapse in housing or people have their homes repossessed and can't afford to pay the money back, we obviously affects the banks. I think we've got too used to low interest rates, which was a point that Ben made. When it comes down to what you do about it, I also think we only have one weapon to deal with inflation, and that is raising interest rates. And I cannot see how we can get inflation down without mortgages going up considerably.
Well, Liz Truss would say growth. I think she's right, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, she is right, but I mean, tax cuts aren't the way to go about it.
But they are, Nigel. That's the point.
Have more money to
But now we're going to start disagreeing again. I can feel it.
No,
yeah.
but I mean, that's, we were told by Rishi Sunak and Jeremy Hunt with their hugely virtuous halo heads that actually cutting taxes would be fueling inflation. But they're wrong, aren't they?
Because they're not wrong.
No, but let me just tell you why they're wrong. Nigel. If you cut VAT, you're cutting the price of goods. If you cut stamp duty, you're cutting the price at which a house trades. If you cut national insurance or income tax, actually you're cutting the cost of labour. And what we've got right now is a broken labour market. And one of the reasons inflation is higher in the United Kingdom than it is in other places is because even though we've got job vacancies, labour, which is a broken labour market with 5.9 million people on universal credit, a record number of people claiming benefits, are not moving back into work. So we're caught in low growth, high taxation, and an inability to meet the economic needs of the United Kingdom. And on top of that, we've got strikes because he didn't cut taxes. We've got strikes because people can't afford to live.
We've got strikes because we've got inflation.
No, but we're in a vicious circle, Nigel, and the only way out is growth.
The strikes are causing inflation.
The only way out is growth.
Inflate the incomes, so that's causing inflation.
In a minor way, but in a much more major way is what Ben is actually suggesting. If you start cutting taxes while you've got high inflation, you pump money into the economy, and once you pump money into the
Nigel,
economy, inflation keeps going up.
It's a fallacy. The first thing Margaret Thatcher did, the first budget, 1979, when inflation was at 15%, she cut the higher rate of tax from 83% to 60% and the basic rate of tax from 33% to 30%. What you've got to do, a primary obligation of government, is to allow people to keep the money they earn, to incentivise them into the job market, and this government has totally failed in that really crucial endeavour.
They're certainly not a Conservative government, because a Conservative government would have done something like that, unlike a Labour government. God help us. God help us.
She shouted.
You're with me, I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. After the break, we'll be talking about capital punishment. You'll hear the thoughts of my head-to-headers, Nigel Nelson and also Ben Habib. But first, let's get your latest news headlines.
It is 3:34. Good afternoon. Aaron Armstrong here in the GB newsroom. The Levelling Up Secretary, Michael Gove's, apologised for what he's described as unacceptable behaviour at a Conservative staff party during lockdown. In the video obtained by The Mirror, partygoers can be heard joking about bending the rules, while others dance in front of tables of food and drink. 2 of the 24 people in attendance were named in Boris Johnson's resignation honours list. The Met Police says it's aware of the new footage and is considering it. Nicola Sturgeon has again maintained she's innocent of any wrongdoing after being questioned by police investigating SNP finances last weekend. Scotland's former First Minister spoke as she returned home for the first time earlier since she was arrested and released without charge.
I can't say very much just now. What I will say is reiterate the statement I issued last Sunday. I am certain that I have done nothing wrong. I intend to be back in Parliament in the early part of the week. I'll make myself available for questions then, obviously within the constraints that I'm referring to right now. For now, I intend to go home, catch up with some family. I know I'm a public figure, I accept what comes with that, but I'm also a human being that's entitled to a bit of privacy.
More than 10,000 people have been detected crossing the English Channel in small boats so far this year. Home Office figures have confirmed crossings have increased because of the recent good weather, with more than 2,500 making the journey in the past week. However, the total number of crossings this year remains below the equivalent number at this point last year. More on our stories on our website, that is gbnews.com. Now, it's back to Nana.
Thank you very much, Aaron. This is GB News. I'm Nana Akua. Welcome on board if you've just joined us. It's fast approaching 37 minutes after 3 o'clock. Now, stay tuned, because on the way next, we'll be debating whether we should bring back capital punishment in light of the parole board green-lighting the release of double-child murderer Colin Pitchfork. You won't want to miss that. Stay tuned. That's next.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard.
We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often there will be difficult stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com. You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions, and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio, and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Good afternoon. If you've just tuned in, where have you been? It's all right there. You've only missed 40 minutes. We've got loads more still to come. I'm Nana Akua. We are the People's Channel. This is GB News. Now, on the way, loads of stuff to discuss. But before, we're talking about the housing crisis. And lots of you have been getting in touch with your thoughts now. Sue says, the banks have made such huge profits from mortgages. Isn't it time that they paid the bailout back, the bailout loans given to them in 2008 and 2009? Yes, I agree. Vicky says MPs finding themselves in positions of advantage, real or imagined. Most humans will believe that the rules don't apply to them. People believing that they should set an example are rare. Lisa says, in the 80s, I was paying a 15.5% mortgage interest rate. Wow. Then I was told the value of my house had dropped and I was in negative equity. I told them to take the keys back and I would leave. They said I could do that, but I still owe them 40 grand or something similar. Crikey, what did you do? I want the follow-up on that story. Did you stay? Did you go? Richard says Labour claimed that they will build more houses. Houses need power and water. People need amenities. Amenities need power and water. People need jobs. All Al may destroy jobs and climate change may bring about water shortages. AI, he means. I get it, Al. AI. Al's a good guy. AI, of course, it's an A and an I. That's not my fault, is it? Listen, just stay with me, please. Just bear with me. But let's move on to this story. It's all about the parole board. They recommended that double child killer and rapist Colin Pitchfork for release despite being recalled into prison only 18 months ago following concerning behaviour. Now, the child killer who raped and murdered 15-year-old Lynn Mann and Dawn Ashworth was sentenced to 30 years behind bars in 1988. And in 2021, the parole board deemed that Pitchfork was no longer a danger to the public and he was released. But 2 months later, he was rearrested and sent back to prison after allegations were made that he was approaching young women in the street. And now the parole board has said that Pitchfork can be released again under what's been described as robust conditions, which will include wearing an electronic tag following a designated address and internet restrictions. But is this enough to deter someone like Pitchfork from re-offending? Should we consider bringing back the death penalty in cases such as these? So joining me to discuss going head-to-head is Nigel Nelson and also Ben Habib. Nigel Nelson.
No. The death penalty has got to be consigned to the dustbin.
I know a song that starts like that.
Well, you could sing it for us.
It's
got to be consigned to the dustbin of history. Criminal justice system moves on. We don't cut people's noses off or ears off anymore.
Nobody's saying do that. We're just saying execute them.
Well, and we don't execute them anymore either. And I think that's absolutely right. It's unconscionable to use the justice system to kill people. Never want to see the death penalty back here.
Even if they've killed someone and we know it's them, it's not going to be a miscarriage of justice. It's 100% them. Maybe there's even video of them doing this thing, which sometimes we have. You still think that it's fine, especially if there's a child killer involved as well.
The question is why you are doing it. It doesn't stop murders.
Well, no.
It's not a deterrent. So what you're doing is doing something morally appalling for no great benefit.
Well, I haven't answered the question. You asked the question, you've answered it yourself. Why? To save a lot of money. What do you think, Ben?
Well, normally I'd be probably, someone like me from my side of the political debate would be pro-capital punishment. But actually, sadly, I can't get my head round bringing capital punishment back. I don't say sadly, I can't get my head round it. I mean, I think...
Why?
Well, because I think all the provisos that you provided in justifying it, you know they definitely did it, it was brutal, it was unnecessary, etc., it wasn't defence, whatever. There are always exceptions to those provisos, and you can never send someone to the gallows with 100% certainty. And one miscarriage of justice...
No, you can. I don't think so, because we have video evidence, we've got DNA, especially if you've even got them on video. Like, some of them where especially some of the paedophiles where they even keep a lot of their mementos of the things that they've been doing just to... I don't know why they do that, but you actually have the evidence and you know it is them in many of these cases where we do actually have that physical evidence.
I think to take someone's life is returning us to an age which I would hope civilization has moved on from.
Why is that uncivilised, though? Why is it? We are animals, and if somebody behaves like one, and there literally is no point, there's no rehabilitation, they're not...
Yeah, and they cost a lot of money, as you say.
A lot of money.
50-odd thousand a year in jail.
Why are we doing that?
In perpetuity. Well, I mean, it might be that if we can't get a grip of the breakdown in law and order, that we're pushed back towards that position. I think it would be a great shame. I think it's a sign of a civilised society where you don't take someone else's life. I don't think people who are sentenced to life imprisonment should be released early. I don't understand how the parole board thinks this through. Maybe if... maybe they should be sent to Rwanda. Why don't we send them to Rwanda?
Well, no, because Rwanda's a good place, and why should they get that? So let me pitch this question to you. So there's an animal, it kills someone, OK? So what you're going to do, rather than put it down, is you're going to put it in a cage. Hang on.
No,
you're going to put
animals aren't human.
Oh, well, OK. But humans, we are part of the animal species.
Yeah, but we're sort of sentient beings.
Let me answer the question. Let me ask the question, and then you can answer the end of the question, because you're answering the middle, and I haven't got to the end. So imagine you've got an animal, right? The animal has committed some sort of attack, or maybe murdered a child, or whatever. You are now going to put this animal in a cage for the rest of its life. Would that, to me, that is crueler than actually putting that animal down. Why is putting something in a cage for the rest of its life less cruel than actually destroying it and moving it out of the way so it doesn't have to put up with that?
Well, I think you make a very good point. I think it's quite there's a lot of retribution involved in locking someone up forever. And, you know, and they deserve retribution. The animal would be put down, I think, in all likelihood.
Well, that's the point. We know that, oh, well, it's too cruel to put the animal in a cage. We can't do that with an animal. It would be terrible. But we can do that with a human. And I understand that if your point is that it is cruel and we'll be uncivilised, then I'm just debunking it by saying, well, actually, it's cruel.
Do the less cruel thing.
The less cruel thing. I'm being kind by putting this person down. To me, I'm showing kindness.
Yeah, but animals are different to human beings, aren't they?
Well, they're not sentient beings.
What do you mean animals aren't sentient beings? How do you know? You're not an animal. Well, you are. But humans, it could be argued that humans are animals. We are animals.
We kill animals to eat, so it's not unusual for an animal to be killed by human beings. We don't eat humans unless you get it. You come down in a plane in the Andes. But aside from that, we don't do it. I mean, there is a dignity.
You come down in a plane in the Andes.
There's a dignity in human life. That is the point. And we should preserve human life at all costs. And what you can't have is a judicial system carrying out judicial murder.
Whose life, though? Preserve human rights at all costs. You're saying that. But this person could go out again, so like you said...
But they shouldn't be released.
But they are being. So let's go to the reality of where we are. Well, a member of somebody who you know, who's close to you, you'd be like, why did this man come out?
It would be an absolute...
he should be...
it would be a total tragedy, and if it was somebody close to me, I would not be in a position to make a decent judgment. That's what we have. That is what we have the courts for.
Well, that's what I'm saying. But if you put yourself in the position of the person of somebody who is affected by this crime, I think that this leniency that this justice system is showing is... I just don't understand. Why are they even considering that he should come out?
Well, I mean, so let's say Blair had been found guilty of going to war illegally in Iraq. Would you have executed Blair? Would you?
Well, no, because...
But, millions of people died.
Yeah, but you know...
And that's an illegal war. That would have been an illegal war.
Well, listen, actually, let me be honest with you. Yeah. I would like to, if I'm honest, if you ask me for that, yes. No, I'm joking, Tony, I'm joking. But what I'm saying is for people, individuals who've committed heinous crimes that we know they've committed, we've seen them actively committing that crime, I don't see any reason why we should be paying for them in prison for many, many years. And I think the kindest thing to do would be to do that.
How do you kill someone to save money is even worse. I mean,
what's wrong with that? Sorry, I don't understand.
Well...
I'm lost for words.
I'm always lost for words. You said it.
No, I'm not. I'm not. It makes perfect sense to me. I don't want... Listen, there's Levi Belfield. So he is a mass murderer. He was killed. He's admitted the killings of others. We know he's killed people. He's even tried to kill someone who then managed to escape, thank God. He is in prison at the moment. He's getting married in prison. And in fact, he was able to use our money, so the taxpayers' money, to fight the case so that he could then be allowed to marry in prison. Yeah. Right? Why on earth? Well, this is money. We spent money on this legal thing for this person who is a murderer, a mass murderer.
But you would have had been executed before he could have caught his new bride, presumably.
That money would have been saved, and that woman, I don't know why or how or why, but, you know...
But no legal system is infallible, and there will be mistakes made.
But this one wouldn't have been a mistake, so I understand and I accept, but when you know beyond...
Would you introduce another category of crime, then? Sort of, you're guilty of first-degree murder, but we haven't got the kind of evidence that would enable us to...
Absolutely. So what it is, it's an option on the table, a bit like, Brexit with no deal.
That was the best deal. The best deal was no deal.
That
was an interesting segue.
I thought we can get into Brexit now.
Let's do Brexit. I'm much more comfortable with Brexit.
Well, so you know my thoughts. I don't want to be paying for people like this, especially when I know they've done this heinous crime. I would bring back capital punishment.
Yeah, but as Ben says, you can never be 100% certain you've got it right.
Well, yes, you can if they've admitted it, you've seen it, they've got it. The person who has managed to run away, somebody's managed to escape them trying to kill them, and we know they've done it. All the DNA, everything points to it.
But the thing about court cases, they're not absolutes. That you've taken an absolute at one end. There will be a load of grey areas coming further down.
Well, in which case no one would ever get prosecuted with anything if we kept everything in the grey when we know that something's actually being perpetrated. So for me, something like this is an...
But just rolling the debate back a bit, you presumably do agree now that given that we don't have capital punishment, that this guy should never have been released from jail.
Should never been released.
Yeah, and so the parole system has to be reformed. When someone is put in jail for a minimum of 30 years, they should serve 30 years, shouldn't they, Nigel? Can we agree on that?
I would agree on that. In this case, I don't think Colin Pitchfork should have got parole.
He shouldn't have got parole, and as if it were me, he wouldn't be here now. Right, let's move on to this one. It's the Chief Rabbi. He's advised schools that they should not know notify parents of children who say that they are transgender. Now, this comes as guidance suggests that information regarding staff or pupil sexuality or gender identity should be treated as confidential and that parents should not be told. Now, this was because apparently it raises a safeguarding concern as teachers do not know the parents and how they might react to the news that their child has come out as trans. Therefore, they shouldn't be told about it. I mean, this is despite the Prime Minister being very concerned that teachers are not contacting families when their child questions their own gender. So do you think that teachers are actually putting our kids at risk for not disclosing important information like this? So joining me to discuss is Nigel Nelson, political commentator and also member of Reform and former MEP Ben Habib. Ben.
So I think the way the story was described isn't entirely accurate. I think there's a bill or a proposed law in Parliament which is going to allow teachers to decide whether or not they tell parents that their child is.
Yes.
And Chief Rabbi Mervis came out against that law, and I completely support him. I think it is utter lunacy that we would even consider teaching children or discussing transgender, the possibility of transgendering before they're mature, sexually mature adults. And to withhold that information, which is so crucial from a parent, is an abomination of their position as teachers. And I think it goes to the heart of a much bigger problem in our society, which is that parents, and this is as a result of state action, parents are increasingly abrogating their parental responsibilities to the state. We're giving up the responsibility to bring our children up to the state, and the state is not good at bringing children up. And, you know, we've got to ditch all this nonsense. Parents have to take back much more responsibility, and any teacher withholding crucial information of any nature on their, on parents' child that they may have the temporary care for should be fired.
But the teacher surely must put the best interests of the child first.
No, but the teacher is not a parent.
No, I understand that. But if you have a child who comes to a teacher and talks to the teacher in confidence about their sexuality or about their gender identity and says, I want this conversation in confidence, I'm not sure myself where I want to go with it, surely the teacher must have the right to say, I will respect that confidence and won't tell your parents. So what the government is talking about, the government legislation that is going through, is to give guidance for teachers. The kind of guidance will be, if a child changes uniform or pronouns, then parents should be informed. Now, for most parents, that's going to be obvious anyway, isn't it? They're going to come home in a skirt right when they've left in trousers or something. So parents would see that. But that's very different. That's the child making an outward demonstration of what they want to do, and the parent should know about it.
This is just, to me...
I think I can't conceive of a circumstance where a teacher would know something about a child of a serious nature and has the ability or right to withhold it from the parent of that child.
Comes to teacher and says, look, miss, I think I might be gay. Would the teacher not be doing the right thing to respect that confidence and try and steer that child through those concerns?
But I would say that I don't think that that's an equal comparison to saying that your gender identity is different, because there is a process that you could then end up embroiled in that could see you on a roller coaster of transition. So I think that can almost medicalise your situation. I think that's
and it also at a more sinister level, I think it's giving cover to teachers who are teaching this kind of nonsense in schools, you know, to promote their ideology without the parents knowing what the hell's going on.
And this isn't gender ideology, this isn't a sexuality, this is gender ideology, which is a little bit concerning at the moment. You know, someone's saying they're gay or, you know, straight or whatever. That's not...
But we're talking about low-level stuff where, I mean, if you were to keep it to gender identity, that can be pretty low-level, where a child is saying, I'm just not sure at the moment what I want to do.
Well, that's why they should consult the parents anyway. They should talk to the parents.
Well, yeah, but then you do have a safeguarding issue. What if the parents
how can you have a safeguarding issue? How can a safeguarding...
If the parents are absolutely appalled by this and all the child wants to do is discuss this with somebody outside the home.
But that is the state second-guessing parents. I mean, it's an abomination. How can that be allowed, Nigel? That a teacher can decide that I'm going to have information on this child that the parent can't know.
But it could well be, if I tell Nana something in confidence and I say, please don't tell Ben.
You're an adult.
I would hope that Nana wouldn't tell you.
But you're an adult. And we're not in school.
Well, you sound like you are. You're behaving like kids. This is a nightmare. Look, I don't see why teachers should withhold any information from the parents, especially if it belongs. That information should be shared with the parents, and the parents should be made aware of this. That's what I think. But what do you think? Keep in touch. This is GB News on TV, online, and on digital radio. On the way, I've got a little monologue for you with regard to the death penalty. But keep all your views coming. So much more in the next hour. Plus, whether you think the Labour Party are kind of hiding behind all of this Tory nonsense, all that is on the way after this.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now? Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Weeknights on GB News from 6 p.m. You'll always get drama.
Please stop, Michelle.
I know, yeah.
Please stop.
Should I just shut up?
Romance.
You like me, I like you. There you go.
There you are. Well, don't tell anybody.
Adventure.
Etc.
That's the whole point. But
And action.
Sergeant read my superstar panel. They're already at it. They're fighting. It's going to be quite a show.
Only on GB News. Britain's watching.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Fridays from 8, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, good afternoon and welcome. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua, and for the next 2 hours, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. Joining me today, it's author and broadcaster Christine Hamilton, and also broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly. But before we get started, let's get your latest news headlines.
Good afternoon. Coming up to 1 minute past 4, I'm Ray Addison in the GB newsroom. Our top story this hour. The Met Police says it's aware of new footage showing Conservative staff partying during lockdown and joking about COVID restrictions and is considering it. Michael Gove, the Levelling Up Secretary, has apologised, describing the behaviour as unacceptable. In the footage obtained by the Mirror, Tory staff can be seen ignoring social distancing rules imposed by the Conservative government at the height of the pandemic. 2 of the 24 people at that Christmas party were later named in Boris Johnson's resignation honours list. Mr Gove told us that disciplinary action has already been taken.
The reason why those steps were taken was to reduce the spread of the disease, in order to make sure that the pressures on the NHS were manageable, in order to make sure that we could treat people who were very ill. So, again, the actions here are deeply distressing, and I can only apologise to people that individuals behaved in this way. My understanding is that there was an investigation into the party when the photograph emerged, and people were disciplined.
MPs will debate any possible punishment for Boris Johnson tomorrow after he was found to have misled Parliament over Partygate. The Privileges Committee recommended that the former Prime Minister should face a 90-day suspension had he not already resigned in advance of his judgment. Now, it's understood that his supporters are being encouraged to abstain, but former Brexit Secretary David Davis told Camilla Tominey he will support the committee, saying its findings are clear.
One of the things about Parliament is it's the highest court in the land.
Yeah.
That creates a problem when you're coming to privileges. What's that problem? It's like having a trial in a village. Everybody knows everybody.
Yeah.
Nobody is entirely unbiased.
How do they know his own mind at the time?
They don't have to. They don't, what they know is what he knows.
Yeah.
If you go to a party, you know it was a party. You don't need an advisor to tell you.
Nicola Sturgeon continues to maintain her innocence after being questioned by police investigating SNP finances last weekend. Scotland's former First Minister spoke as she returned home for the first time since being arrested and released without charge.
You know, I can't say very much just now. What I will say is reiterate the statement I issued last Sunday. I am certain that I have done nothing wrong. I intend to be back in Parliament in the early part of the week. I'll make myself available for questions then, obviously within the constraints that I'm referring to right now. For now, I intend to go home, catch up with some family. I know I'm a public figure, I accept what comes with that, but I'm also a human being that's entitled to a bit of privacy.
Staying with politics, and Rishi Sunak is facing a 4th by-election following the resignation of a former Tory MP. David Warburton, who had the Tory whip suspended last April, has stepped down from his Somerton and Frome seat following accusations of sexual misconduct and cocaine use. He's the 4th Conservative MP in 8 days to resign, following announcements by Boris Johnson, Nigel Adams and Nadine Dorries. The number of migrants entering the UK in small boats via the English Channel so far this year has surpassed 10,000. According to Home Office figures, 374 people were detected making the dangerous journey yesterday. Crossings have increased as the weather improved, but it's still below the equivalent number at this point last year. Almost 46,000 migrants crossed the Channel in 2022. The UK has pledged an extra £16 million to boost Ukraine's cyber defences. It's in addition to £6.35 million promised last year. The government says it's to help Ukraine better defend its critical infrastructure from Russian attacks. The Prime Minister will use a summit this week to call on investors and businesses to step up support for the country's economic recovery. Comes as Ukraine continues its counter-offensive in the south and east of the country. Thunder, lightning and heavy rain are moving across the UK, leading to concerns of flash flooding. The Met Office is predicting wind and hail with a yellow weather warning for thunderstorms across the majority of England, Wales and Northern Ireland until midnight. It could lead to a month's worth of rain falling in a few hours. It's the result of recent warm weather, with temperatures in the mid to high 20s. And Prince William has vowed to tackle homelessness by building social housing on his own land.
The Prince of Wales told The Times that ending the plight of hidden homelessness in the UK has been a lifelong ambition. He's expressed frustration at the government, councils and charities, who he says are managing homelessness rather than preventing it. Many of the details of the 5-year plan are to be announced next month. This is GB News. We'll bring you more as it happens. So let's get straight back to Nana.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Ray. It's just coming up to 7 minutes after 4 o'clock. This is GB News. We are the People's Channel. I'm Nana Akua. What kind of a backward place do we live in where a murderer, who should have all his rights in prison removed, is allowed to marry? I mean, it's got to be a joke, right? And what kind of woman or person would put themselves up for this? I mean, it reminds me of the Catherine Tate sketch where she would only date people on death row, and only you would think nothing like this would actually happen in real life and that it was in no way realistic, and that's why it was funny. But the laughter ends when it becomes a reality. Levi Belfield was convicted of murders of the 13-year-old Millie Dowler in March 2002, Marshall McDonald, who was 19 the following year, and in 2004, Amélie Delagrande, who was 22. He was also convicted of the attempted murder of Kate Sheedy. He then recently confessed to the killing of Lynn and Megan Russell after a bout with prison psychologists, first claiming responsibility for their murders last year, which he then took back only to sign a confession. Murders another man called Michael Stone is in prison for. Now, Michael Stone's solicitor said, "It must have taken some courage and considerable soul-searching by Levi Belfield to have written and signed this confession." He went on to say, "It will hopefully bring closure to the families involved. Now the police need to respond and investigate these crimes afresh to effect closure for their families." Courage. My heart bleeds. Levi Belfield is basically a mass murderer, a serial killer, serving 2 whole life orders who will die behind bars for the rest of his life. The fact that he was even allowed to apply to marry his girlfriend and to request for legal aid to challenge a decision to block the marriage is beyond me. I mean, why the hell is the taxpayer stumping up money to pay for his legal fees? Apparently there are no current legal routes to block the marriage, but the Ministry of Justice acknowledged the pain and anger that the victims' families felt. I mean, you're not wrong, is it? Seriously? That would be seriously painful. I mean, another one. Double child killer and rapist Colin Pitchfork. Now, Pitchfork, who was jailed for life for raping and strangling 2 15-year-old girls, Linda Mann and Dawn Ashworth in Leicestershire, has been granted parole and will be released from prison. I mean, you couldn't make this up. This country is weak when it comes to justice. Our police forces only until recently couldn't even be bothered to turn up to a burglary. But it irks me that serious criminals like this, when their crimes are proven that it is they who have perpetrated them, are released. It's madness. In Pitchfork's case, they tried it, but he wound up back behind bars. It is clear, in my view, that where there is no doubt that serial killers, in particular child killers, are found guilty, they should face the prospect of execution. I don't want to pay for these people anymore. It's time to bring back the death penalty. So before we get stuck into the debate, here's what else is coming up today. For the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, are Labour just as bad as the Tories? An investigation has revealed that Sue Gray broke impartiality rules when she had talks with Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer about becoming his chief of staff whilst working as a civil servant. I mean, this in combination with their green policies, being unable to define a woman. I mean, will they be just as bad if they take the helm? Then stay tuned at 4:50 is World View. I'll be heading across the Atlantic to discuss the federal indictment against former US President Donald Trump and why he thinks the media are purposefully attacking him, with the host of the People's Politics podcast, Paul Duddridge, who will be live with me just before 5 o'clock. And then stay tuned, because after that it's this week's Outside, and my special mystery guest is known for her appearances in I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here and Big Brother. There were also reports that she fell into a bush with Prince Harry during a night out. Can anyone guess who she might be? That's on the way in the next hour. As ever, tell me what you think on everything we're discussing. Email gbviews@gbnews.com or tweet me at gbnews. So, right, let's get started. Let's welcome again to my panel author and broadcaster Christine Hamilton and also broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly. No single shots for you.
Danny's making improper suggestions.
What was he suggesting?
I'm not. I couldn't possibly on.
How dare you? I thought,
television. No, not to me.
I thought we were pals. Oh, yes, just clarify that, yeah,
Come on.
please.
Oh, no, I can't.
I don't think I want to talk about that
I don't think you need
anymore.
to know.
I don't
Nana,
want
you would
to.
have found it funny, but it was strictly for off-air.
No, I think I might have found it a bit...
No, you would have found it funny.
Right.
Christine making a point here.
Right.
Fanning.
Yes.
Right, OK, so let's start with you, Danny. Why not,
Yeah.
then? OK, so in my view, these people, we know they did it. I wouldn't waste any more money on them.
Do you know what really irks me is that thug Belfield. That really annoys me. What he did was, besides just completely... It is reprehensible. There are a few things in life that you can't find in your soul to forgive. But he's showing no signs of contrition. No signs of contrition whatsoever. In fact, it's only since he's been behind bars that he's fessed up to other crimes. And if the Sun have got it right, there was £30,000 worth of taxpayers' cash in legal aid. What I have to say, though, as far as whether he should be allowed to marry in prison, I think that kid should be punished. I think he should do hard time. And if it means that... I mean, who's this freak of a woman who's decided to marry him as well? How the hell did that happen?
Well, you know, I think there's a duty of care, really, for the prison to allow that to even go on. I don't understand how that would have got out there. There must be some communication chain that he's allowed to use. I don't understand.
But just to get back to your point, the central point is, should we bring back hanging or some form
Not
of...
hanging. I mean, you don't hang people anymore. That's like archaic.
OK, some form of execution.
Yeah.
I'm torn on this because do we see it as a money-saving exercise or do we see it... OK, is the other partly bit, is it a deterrent?
Absolutely.
Well, I'd say the money-saving, yes, but I don't think it deters. All we've got to do is look at America.
Oh, well, we'll have a look at Qatar then, the World Cup. There was a deterrent there. You go to prison for 6 months, they're not going to take any prisoners. And guess what? During the World Cup, a lot of the British people who may well have committed or been hooligans in this country, I'm not to say that they would have been, but there was no crime there.
Yeah, but we're talking murder, not hooliganism.
Well, they would also... I think they execute in Qatar as well.
Yeah, but that's an Islamic culture. You do something wrong, you chop your hand off.
You said there's no example that it's a deterrent. I'm saying that if you look at regimes like that, there is hardly any crime. It deters.
But that is not a secular society.
No, but
it's an Islamic society.
You asked me a question.
Well, let me qualify
I'm not arguing what society they are. You said there's no deterrent. I said there is. If you look at examples where they take it seriously...
Let me qualify it. In secular countries, there's no deterrent then. Look at America.
But your argument is that the deterrent of the death if you commit a crime won't work. And I'm saying it does, and it has done, and I've proved a place where it does. Christine?
Well, there's a world of difference between hooliganism and a mass murderer.
No.
I think, with respect, I think your argument about it deterring hooliganism in Qatar, anybody who commits that sort of murder is mentally deranged. They must be. No normal person would do that. They just wouldn't. The real horrific thing about Levi Belfield, I hate to mention this because he will then, if he marries, he will be allowed conjugal visits.
Really?
Oh, God.
I mean, yeah, he will. So I have very mixed views on... I used to be in favour of capital punishment, and then, having experienced how a jury can get things wrong, I then completely changed my view, and I decided that on the off chance that they were innocent, it was grotesque, and it's not the mark of a civilised society.
I don't agree with that. I don't think that's true.
But I was listening to Ben Habib earlier. Was it Ben or was it Nigel?
Either one of them.
Either one of them. One of them was saying that, you were arguing with them, to them, that when you know that somebody's done it, when you've got video evidence, when it is as heinous as somebody like Belfield, then I begin to waver and I begin to think that, frankly, I don't think... it is about saving money, and, of course, we shouldn't have to pay for them, but I wouldn't do it just to save money. I think it's to show that society places such abhorrence on these crimes that they will take your life away.
Can I just come back?
I wouldn't want to have to vote on it in the House of Commons.
Can I just come back to your comparison, because you said that me comparing hooliganism and death penalty and murder. I'm not comparing the crimes.
No, I know you're not.
What I'm comparing is the act of a deterrent, the deterrent effect. And I'm saying that when people know that they're genuinely going to be punished and there's not going to be any leeway and, we'll let you out, because in Qatar there would not have been any leeway for people, then people actually take it seriously. And I think part of this is that people don't take the justice system in this country seriously at all. I mean, you saw that Mizzy character who was going into people's homes and just messing around, and then he'd come out and film it on his video and then pop it down on TikTok so that he would get likes and follows. He even said that the system is weak.
No, but I just...
And you know, someone like that, and he was right. But actually, just to correct you on a point, I don't think that Levi Belfield gets conjugal rights.
Does he not?
I don't think he does.
Well,
can I just...
in my ears.
Have you been told? Okay, well, thank heavens for small mercies. But I cannot see that capital punishment would provide a deterrent. I really don't.
I don't
for
think...
these people, because they don't think in those terms.
But there's some people who do it who aren't. You see, there are layers of murderers. You've got one serial killer who probably nothing will stop, but there'll be people in between who will do little things who maybe haven't thought that they're going to get caught out, and I think that will stop. At least it'll work as a deterrent for some people, not all.
I don't think it makes us any less of a civilised society if we were to reintroduce capital punishment. I don't think it would. I think a civilised society, you could spin it on its head and say a civilised society is a society that looks after its civilised citizens. Citizens that don't break the law, and if there is something... And I'm with you, but I think the civilised society is a bit of a red herring in the sense that you could argue that the government is looking after its good citizens, and if this is going to be a deterrent, although I disagree with Nana about how strong a deterrent it is, because I think if you're going to commit murder, you are so enraged. You know, a 30-year stretch or capital punishment, if a 30-year stretch isn't sufficient deterrent, then neither is capital punishment.
But let's be honest, the majority, I would suggest, of murders are probably committed by people who are not real serial killers, I think.
That's correct.
So in my
They've only
view,
killed one.
Right. So if you imagine those people are the ones that are likely to be deterred from murder. I think young people would think twice about carrying knives if there was a possibility that if anything happened or that there was a serious deterrent, but they don't think they're going to be caught.
Well, young people wouldn't be hanged anyway.
No,
wouldn't be...
Well, it depends how young you are.
Anyway.
But what I'm saying is, well, it depends how young you are and how bad your crime is, to be honest. I mean, I think that, you know, 18 is where it starts.
Cut-off.
So that's the cut-off. So what I'm saying is there will be the larger majority of people who commit these sort of crimes will be possibly those who will be affected by thinking that there is a serious deterrent at the end of the day.
I would have thought that life imprisonment ought to be a pretty serious deterrent. I mean, can you imagine the horror?
Nobody goes to prison, though, literally. They don't want to put anyone in.
30 years. I mean, the horror of the doors banging behind you for 30 years and the sort of conditions that people have in prison nowadays, if that isn't a deterrent...
It's not, is it? It doesn't seem to be, does it?
I don't think that...
Well, I think it points to the fact that nothing is a deterrent if you want to murder someone, whether it's the death penalty, whether it's 30 years stretch being released on licence.
I don't think so.
So how can it be deterrent if so many murderers are in prison?
Well, there probably a lot. Well, there should probably be a lot more in prison. I mean, they're even letting some of them out. They shouldn't be coming back out again. These people wouldn't then be re-released back into society for an opportunity to commit crime again.
Poll after poll, I haven't seen a recent one, but poll after poll says that the vast majority of the public are in favour of bringing back capital punishment. So
the vast majority?
Of course.
Yes.
What, 70% or something?
Well, I haven't seen a recent poll. I'm sorry, I should have checked all this, but let's just say the majority, OK?
Sorry to be so pedantic.
No, that's all right. Take the fast out. But the majority. And it would give society a sense of satisfaction and, as it were, a job well done. It would certainly give the families of these poor victims
but it needs to be... I would feel very uncomfortable if it was a majority verdict on a jury. It would need to be something like some ironclad DNA or video evidence.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what I'm saying. Absolutely. No doubt about it.
No doubt whatsoever. And there are plenty of murders that there is absolutely no doubt about. I mean, we've got people on camera committing murder. We know it's them, and then they're put in prison. No, I don't want these people who are committing murders where it is clear that they've done it in complete cold blood. I'm afraid, you know, I know there's... Sorry.
Well, there's the famous Who Killed Hanratty. Do you remember that? Way back in the 60s. And
let him have it.
There were two... Exactly.
The pistol.
Hanratty's accomplice, whose name escapes me, said, let him have it, and Hanratty shot the policeman. What he says he meant was, let him have the gun. Should Hanratty have been hanged?
But did he still... But did it result in murder?
Yeah, he shot a copper and killed the copper.
No, he did, and he was killed.
What's the difference?
But because the lad was, I think, 15, and I think he had learning difficulties, and he was sort of egged on to carry a gun, and his accomplice said, let him have it, and the kid interpreted that as in, let him have it as in a pistol, as in a bullet.
And that's unfortunate, but he still committed murder.
Yeah. He
He did, but under those circumstances...
But that was 60 years ago.
I would say he
misunderstood, but he
definitely
still
not have been...
I don't know. I mean, the act is still the same. You still committed murder.
But he had learning difficulties and everything.
Yes,
yeah, that's very sad. But the person who gave him the gun should also be perhaps imprisoned as well.
He would have done nowadays. Called what's that collective responsibility called? Where you? Well, I forgot what it's called. But he would be in prison.
Collective responsibility.
That's in Parliament, but nobody seems to abide by that.
That's another debate.
Joint enterprise. Joint enterprise.
Joint enterprise. That's it.
That's it.
Right. Well, listen. If you just joined us, welcome on board. What are your views? What are you saying? It's coming up to 21 minutes after 4 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online, and on digital. Radio. Still to come. My mystery guest in Outside. She's the queen of reality TV. She was rubbed shoulders with Prince Harry. Was also famed for being a glamour model. Stay tuned to find out who she is. But on the way next, it's time for the Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, are Labour just as bad as the Tories? Send me your thoughts. Email gbviews@gbnews.com. Tell me what you think. You can also tweet me at GBNews. I have a poll up right now asking, are Labour just as bad as the Tories? Cast your vote now.
First and foremost, I'm a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com? You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions, and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio, and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon. This is coming up to 26 minutes after 4 o'clock. This is GB News. We are the People's Channel. Don't forget, you can also stream us live on YouTube. I'm Nana Akua. Now, before the break, we were discussing bringing back the death penalty as a serial killer, Levi Belfield, wins his battle to get married in prison. Well, let's see what you've been saying. Glenn says those who commit murder should have no rights. I'm with you. Julie says the death penalty should apply to all guilty murder verdicts, as long as you know that they've definitely done it. I'm with that, as long as you have 100% clarity that they've done it. Brent says it's best to let them suffer in prison. Well, I actually think that is the crueler option, I would agree, but I don't want to waste money on them or for them to think that they can start asking to get married. And Jan says this should be available as an option for a judge, not for specific crimes, only when there's absolutely no doubt, not just no reasonable doubt. With you 100%. That's exactly my view. Right. And then Les says, I completely agree for certain crimes with 100% evidence of guilt, the death penalty should be an option for society. Well, thank you for that. Keep all those thoughts coming. But now it's time for the Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, are Labour just as bad as the Tories? I mean, both parties have been involved in political scandals, but who do you trust to lead this country? To start, some say that Sue Gray and the scandal that's revealed a shock lack of integrity within the Labour Party, in particular Sir Keir Starmer, for even posing the option for her to be working with him during that particular time. We are not sure as to when exactly he spoke to her. It's been reported that the former senior civil servant and ethics chief, Sue Gray, is believed to have breached impartiality rules when she held talks to join Sir Keir Starmer's party as his chief of staff. Furthermore, remember Beergate, the scandal that tarnished the Labour Party's reputation, as prominent politicians were accused of inappropriate behaviour at a late-night drinking session, but they were cleared of any wrongdoing, despite numerous lies, which things that didn't add up. Labour has also pledged to cover public land and housing estates with solar panels as part of its net zero plans, aimed at cutting $93 billion from the nation's energy costs. However, let's not forget that the Conservative Party is not immune to criticism too, as they've faced their fair share of scandals. So, for the Great British Debate, I'm asking, are Labour just as bad as the Tories? Let me introduce you to my guests who will to discuss that. Nigel Nelson, GBNews senior political commentator, Reem Ibrahim, GBNews contributor, Peter Spencer, political commentator. Well, Peter, I'm going to start with you. I mean, look, Labour keep going backwards on ideas that they've put forwards. A lot of the things that even their MPs are also embroiled in scandals as well. I mean, they feel like they're all just as bad as each other.
Make any suggestion of parity here, to quote Margaret Thatcher's legendary press officer of years ago, Bernard Ingham, this is bunkum and balderdash. Look, Sue Gray, yeah, she does appear to have been a bit slippy-slidey with the rules, a bit naughty. That actually adds up to a sort of a pothole in Sir Keir Starmer's road to number 10. Conversely, we have the Conservatives apparently disappearing into a giant sinkhole of sleaze and mendacity and general awfulness. I mean, what are they voting on tomorrow in the House of Commons? They're voting on the Conservative-dominated Privileges Committee finding that Boris Johnson, Conservative Prime Minister, lied and lied and lied again through his teeth about the Watergate parties. Now, I mean, we're a bit brutalised by stuff going on, but, you know, let's just step back a bit. It is quite a big deal to lie to Parliament. John Profumo, when he did it 60 years ago, he just did it the once and he was out. And it took 10 years of being a thoroughly good boy in the East End before he got anything like forgiven. So this parity thing, I think, simply does not stack up at all.
Well, Reem, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a particularly interesting point about the fact that we've kind of declined our standards when it comes to these political scandals. We seem to be sort of more accepting of them now. I'm looking at both the Labour Party and the Conservative Party. I really don't have any kind of hope for the future. We've got the highest tax burden in 70 years. We've got a Conservative Party that is more concerned with identity politics, with internal divisions, with ideological conversations about where the party's direction is really going. And we've got a Labour Party that seems to want to have a national energy company and wants to see more growth, but still supports the increase in corporation tax, All of these policies seem to not be working. I fundamentally am a libertarian. I believe that the state, no matter who is in charge, has the propensity to do more harm than good. I don't care what colour tie you're wearing, you are a bad politician.
Nigel Nelson.
Yeah, I just think that the Tory party has lost its way. I mean, they've been in government for 13 years. 13 years is probably the maximum that any government should be in place. When it comes down to, is there an equivalence between the two parties with the various scandals and mistakes and so on? I'd have said not. I tend to agree with Peter on this one. I think that that Sue Gray has probably broken a very minor rule. It's a technical breach. I don't think that it's up there with Partygate.
So that's okay then. So it seems to me that it's okay for Sue Gray to break a bit of a rule while she's investigating Partygate, the big thing that you've kind of got Boris Johnson on. It's okay for her to then be in talks with Sir Keir Starmer, potentially during this investigation. We don't know the exact timings because she's kind of refused to talk about certain things. In the meantime, we're hounding Boris Johnson. Do you not think that perhaps we're giving the Labour Party a bit of a clear pass? Whilst I admit that I feel that the Tories have been in for too long, Peter, surely we need to be looking slightly more closely at the Labour Party now.
It's worth remembering, of course, the Labour Party happens to be the opposition. The government is the government. They're the people that set rules, and they're the people who expect people to abide them. Now, let us consider the footage that the Mirror managed to get hold of, which of course is all over GB News and elsewhere, of something that looked like a tacky episode of the Office. There we go, with people flagrantly ignoring the rules, and just consider how this is likely to play with the public. I mean, the imagery is so graphic, and let us think about the stages of grief. We have the first stage of grief is denial. The second is anger. There are so many people out there who lost loved ones during the COVID epidemic, who couldn't even say goodbye to them, and you got these guys simply just putting two fingers up to the lot of them. That's how it's going to read. So to that extent, I think they have really, really blotted their copy.
True, but again, we haven't scrutinised. The Labour Party might have been getting up to stuff like that. We just may not have heard about it, Reem.
I think absolutely we focus on the Conservative Party because they're in government, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the Labour Party or any Labour Party aides would have acted any differently. Just because they come from a different party doesn't mean that they're innately somehow good. Clearly, I totally agree that video that the Mirror managed to get hold of is absolutely damning and really just kind of shows the kind of zeitgeist that we're in at the moment. We've seen the way that the lockdowns have impacted us economically, emotionally, physically, the way that businesses have had to shut down. And then by contrast, we've got these politicians, we've got these aides, we've got these staffers dancing and partying whilst the rest of us are suffering. I think it's quite damning about the government's actions. Again, though, that doesn't mean the Labour Party would have acted any differently.
Well, listen, Reem Ibrahim, thank you very much. Also, Peter Spencer, good to talk to you, and Nigel Nelson, thank you for your views. So what do you think? Do you think the Labour Party are just as bad as the Tories? You're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. After the break, we'll continue with the Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, are Labour just as bad as the Tories? You'll hear the thoughts of my panel, author and broadcaster Christine Hamilton, also broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly. But first, let's get your latest news headlines.
Thanks, Nana. 34 minutes past 4. Here's the latest from the GB Newsroom. The Met Police say it's aware of new footage showing Conservative staff partying during lockdown and joking about COVID restrictions and is considering it. Michael Gove, the Levelling Up Secretary, has apologised, describing the behaviour as unacceptable. In the footage obtained by the Mirror, Tory staff can be seen ignoring social distancing rules imposed by the Conservative government at the height of the pandemic. 2 of the 24 people at the Christmas party were later named in Boris Johnson's resignation honours list. Nicola Sturgeon continues to maintain her innocence after being questioned by police investigating SNP finances last weekend. Scotland's former First Minister spoke as she returned home for the first time since being arrested and released without charge.
You know, I can't say very much just now. What I will say is reiterate the statement I issued last Sunday. I am certain that I have done nothing wrong. I intend to be back in Parliament in the early part of the week. I'll make myself available for questions then, obviously within the constraints that I'm referring to right now. For now, I intend to go home, catch up with some family. I know I'm a public figure, I accept what comes with that, but I'm also a human being that's entitled to a bit of privacy.
More than 10,000 people have been detected crossing the English Channel in small boats so far this year. Home Office figures have confirmed that crossings have increased because of the recent good weather, with more than 2,500 people making the journey in the past week. However, the total number of crossings so far this year remains below the equivalent number at this time last year. OK, you can get more on all of those stories by visiting our website, gbnews.com. Now let's get straight back to Nana.
Thank you, Ray. It's just coming up to 37 minutes after 4 o'clock. We are the People's Channel. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. Still to come, it's this week's Outside. Now, my mystery guest is a queen of reality TV. She has rubbed shoulders with Prince Harry and is also famed for being a glamour model and was very, very vocal during the Wagatha Christie scandal. But who do you think she is? Get in touch, GBviews at gbnews.com. But up next, it's the Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, are Labour just as bad as the Tories? That's on the way.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard.
We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think. Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often they will be difficult stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know,
All
Kate
sorts
Moss?
of Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, welcome back. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. Don't forget to download the GB News app, where you can check out all the programmes here on the channel. I'm Nana Akua, and it's time for the Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, are Labour just as bad as the Tories? Both parties have been involved in political scandals, but who do you trust to lead our country? I mean, to start, some would say that Sue Gray and the scandal that's around her reveals a shocking lack of integrity within the Labour Party. And according to the reports, former senior civil servants, and which is what she was the chief of ethics, wasn't she? She's believed to have breached impartiality rules when she held talks to join Sir Keir Starmer's party as his chief of staff. Furthermore, there was the Beergate situation, remember that? Angela Rayner was there, but then she wasn't, or she wasn't there, then she was. Then it was an impromptu gathering, but then there was a memo. I mean, obviously, they weren't found guilty of anything, but a lot of scandal there. Has this tarnished the Labour Party's reputation, in your view? I mean, they were cleared of any wrongdoing. Labour have also pledged to cover public land and housing estates with solar panels. Is this feasible and realistic? I mean, how can you do that? It'd be like an eyesore of solar panels. What will the damage be to the rest of the environment? How does that really pan out? This is all part of their net zero plan, aimed to cut £93 billion from the nation's energy costs. However, let's not forget the Conservatives as well. I mean, they're not immune to criticism, as you know. We've literally been focusing on them throughout. They've faced their fair share of scandals. Partygate, we've got this latest thing with the thing going on with they're not civil servants, but people who are helping the mayor, potential mayoral candidate. I mean, so what do you think? For the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, are the Labour Party just as bad as the Tories? So joining me now to discuss, my panel, author and broadcaster Christine Hamilton, and also broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly. So Christine Hamilton, what do you think? Are they just as bad as each other? Are we stuck?
Well, I think we're going to find out fairly soon, aren't we? I'm afraid this great juggernaut of the Labour government is coming towards us relentlessly, closer and closer. I must say, these latest shenanigans about the Tories are mind-blowing. Just when you thought you couldn't get any more, along comes, and it's unfortunate for them, that this extraordinary video of people falling over onto the table of food and drink, and somebody wandering across with a beer. It is absolutely extraordinary. It is this one rule for them and one for the rest of us. And I'm not surprised people who had funerals, etc., and lost friends and family, etc., under very difficult circumstances, who were obeying these damned rules. And these are the people who were making the rules. They might not have been the ministers, but they were the backup for the minister. They were the Tories in power. They were making the rules that all the rest of us had to. So no wonder the focus at the moment is on the governing party. Of course it is, because that's where it should be. But the Sue Gray thing... I don't know that it's all completely come out yet about Sue Gray, but I think if we had known what we know now, she would never have been put in charge of this Partygate thing. I mean, that stinks. Just as I don't think Bernard Jenkins should have stayed on the Privileges Committee.
Oh, that was ridiculous.
When he knew perfectly well that he'd been to his wife's birthday party and where there was the drink was mentioned in the invitation for this. What I find extraordinary about that is that her invitation said this is just for a few friends. Well, one of those few friends has revealed that WhatsApp message or whatever it was to the press, which is extraordinary. Some friend.
Not a good friend.
Not the sort of friend you want.
Danny.
The difference between the two parties, I see, is something that's been going back generations. The Labour Party are brimming with idealism. They have these standards that they want to try and attain and to reach, whereas Tories are more pragmatic. They understand, they're realists, so they understand that it's not possible necessarily to cut off the oil because people are going to freeze over the winter, and also that means importing oil is going to cost more CO2 CO2 and all of this, whereas Keir Starmer, who ironically back in 2010 was the head of the CPS, and it was his decision to prosecute 3 Labour MPs and 1 Tory MP over the expenses scandal. So things are coming round. Would that party have taken place? By the way, if it was a Labour government, I think it would have taken place.
Sure,
I think these are young people letting their hair down. You didn't see anyone middle-aged and above. They were on that dancing. I don't know what was more criminal, the offence or the dancing.
Dreadful. People of that age shouldn't be dad dancing.
Not dancing like that. That woman in the red dress. She will. And for the benefit of our radio listeners, you've got. It is like something out of The Office. It's like a 1 o'clock dance at the nightclub before you get kicked out.
Well, that jumper. Christmas jumper, isn't it? Is that a Christmas
That poor
jumper?
girl is going to be so embarrassed.
Well,
they all are.
But they're young. I mean, they look like sort of.
It's no excuse.
Yeah.
They're not that young. They're
That
not
would have
that young. They
happened-
were in responsible jobs.
That would have happened with a Labour government. And, Nana, you are bang on the money again. That picture of the curry and the beer with Keir Starmer in the North East, I said at the time that the North East Crime and Police Commissioner is a Labour waller. So, of course, they're going to turn a blind eye. There was no difference to Keir Starmer holding a bottle of lager, tucking into a curry, as there was with Boris Johnson having a slice of cake or holding up a glass of red wine.
But they would argue that they are not sort of party
Probably
political.
have to say
they would argue that they're not party political and that they would uphold the law in the way they see fit. And actually, they, in their view, did not believe that Keir Starmer broke the law or broke the rules
It's
at
odd
the time.
that so many other people do think he did.
Well, to me, it looks pretty blatant to me, but I'm not the crime commissioner in Durham there. I'm not the one making the decisions on that. I think that what he did was pretty much equivalent to a party that supposedly Boris Johnson attended, or did its equivalent to that party there with those young people dancing around. And why you would try and conceal some of the information is beyond me.
May I just come up with a conspiracy theory that I think is quite reasonable, and I don't think it's too outlandish, but someone has been sitting on that video for nearly 3 years now because the photos were released a while ago, a number of years ago. So that probably comes from the same camera phone, and it's really interesting to find out what the motivation of releasing it to the Daily Mirror. Notice it was the Mirror they gave it to, who want to bring down the Tories. And so that was someone who's a Conservative staffer who's given that film over to a hard-left newspaper. It'd just be interesting.
Somebody who was there.
Exactly. It'd be interesting to see what the motivation was and the timing.
Well, what do you think?
Mustn't reveal sources, mustn't reveal sources.
Mustn't. But I want to know. But this show's nothing without you and your views. Let's welcome our great British voices, their opportunity to be on the show and tell us what they think about the topics we're discussing. Let's head over to Kidderminster to have a chat with our regular GB voice, John Reid. John Reid. Listen, John, are they just as bad as each other? I mean, are we just... It's like out of the frying pan into the fire, really, or they're both hellflyers. What do you think?
Oh, Nana, how can you possibly compare the two parties? On a scale of 1 to 10, the Labour's at 1 and the Tories are at 11. It's just ridiculous. You couldn't possibly trust the Tories any longer than you have to, and the sooner they go, the better. Yeah, nobody's perfect, are they? I think the Labour Party would have a question or two to answer, yeah. But it's not world-shattering. And the main difference that I see is that the Tories were making the rules and the Labour were not. So there we are. I don't think Labour can come anywhere near what the Tories are guilty of. And I wouldn't for 1 minute trust them explicitly, but I would say that they're a much better bet than the Tories ever are going to be. And one last thing, Nana. How could you possibly vote for people where the youngsters wear jumpers like that lad in the film?
Well, I don't know who I'm going to vote for, if I'm totally honest with you. None of them. They are, I think they're all a nightmare. And I don't subscribe to the notion that one is better than the other at all. I think the Labour Party just probably got away with a bit more because, like you said, they weren't in power. John Reid, thank you so much. Really good to talk to you. Thank you. That's John Reid. He's in Kidderminster. He's our great British voice. You're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, on radio and on digital radio. I've said that already. On the way outside, my mystery guest is a queen of reality TV. She's rubbed shoulders with Prince Harry and is also famed for being a glamour model. She's also been very vocal during the Agatha Christie scandals. Remember that? She was a model. She's done loads of things. She was even an army cadet. Who do you think she is? Before that, though, up next, it's World View. We're going to head over to the States and discuss the federal indictment against former US President Donald Trump with the host of the Politics People podcast, Paul Dudridge. That's next. Don't go anywhere.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching. Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com? You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon. This is GB News. We are the People's Channel. It's now time for World View. If you just joined me, I'm Nana Akua. Let's start with the Belarusian president, who's Alexander Lukashenko. He said that his country has started receiving deliveries of Russian tactical nuclear weapons, which are reportedly 3 times more powerful than the bombs used in Hiroshima. So joining me to talk about that is a Russian political commentator and expert, Danny Armstrong. Danny, so this is a bit of a development. Is it... What on earth is going on with you?
I knew you'd have something to say about that, Nana. I knew.
I thought, who the hell is that? What's going on? What's going on?
I've been told I look like Poirot, and if I was a little bit more like Poirot, I'd probably have a little bit more clue as to what's going on in Russia with these tactical nuclear warheads. Of course, as you said, nice. Alexander Lukashenko has said that he's received the first deployment of these weapons. Now, this is nothing new. We expected this to happen. There's going to be more of them coming by the end of summer. But I think the question on your lips, Nana, if I may assume, is this going to bring us closer to nuclear war? Right. Well, it's not really going to make any difference because Russia's still going to have control over those nuclear weapons, those short-range tactical nuclear warheads. But Alexander Lukashenko, the Belarusian president, has said if we aggress Belarus as a state, we're going to use those nuclear weapons. Now, whether there's any truth to those words, we don't really know. Joe Biden's waded in on the topic. He said that it's totally irresponsible. That's despite the US having given nuclear warheads to a number of countries in the European Union and, of course, in the NATO countries, as NATO nuclear sharing policy allows, since the 1950s, of course, since the Cold War. It is seen as a move by Russia as a direct response to the West arming Ukraine and as a warning to the West and saying, if you get any more involved in this Ukraine war, we have our nuclear warheads in one of our ally states. So that's basically where we are at the moment. It's not really bringing us any closer to nuclear war, but it is seen as a kind of a warning and kind of a threat to the West. But of course, this has been going on within NATO for many, many years and many, many decades. There was a referendum a few days after the invasion in Belarus that said we want to repeal an act that prohibits the nuclear warheads being stationed in Belarus. Now that's gone, and Russia are free to do whatever they want with their nuclear warheads. Vladimir Putin actually said at the St. Petersburg Economic Forum that's been going on recently, he said that the West knows that we have more nuclear warheads than NATO and the US. Russia has around about 6,000. NATO and NATO countries in the US have around about 5,500. He said they know it. They want us to reduce them, but, and excuse the expression, screw them.
Well, that doesn't work like that though with nuclear war, does it? If you think you're going to set them all off to other countries, the fallout will only end up in your own. So he's not quite got that right. Danny Armstrong, thank you so much. Good to talk to you. Let's travel over to America now and have a chat with the host of the Politics People podcast, Paul Dudderidge. Paul, thank you very much for joining me. All right, so let's start with Trump, of course, Donald Trump. What's going on there? The charges seem to be quite serious, actually.
Oh, they're really serious. This is a political rival being indicted and charged by the current administration. Yeah, I am in America. I'm not in Venezuela. We literally have political administration being able to charge and prosecute political rivals. Who's currently leading? It's his leading opponent. It's Biden's leading opponent. Let's remember this for the official status. Trump is 34 points ahead now of DeSantis. He is the leading political rival, and he is being indicted. We saw that on Tuesday. I think 37 charges altogether, emanating from 31 so-called offences. So yes, it's very, very serious. This is the federal level, which you can't really mess about with, because the federal government famously will find loopholes to get anybody. It's the old famous thing in America: if you put a stamp on a letter and send it and it's got some criminal activity in it, that becomes a federal offence. It's branches are absolutely everywhere, and you don't want to mess with the federal government. And yes, the current administration is finding ways to prosecute its leading opponent at the moment.
Well, DeSantis must be very happy about that, because that he has a chance to benefit from the fallout, if there is one.
Well, no, because of the Constitution, Trump could lose and still run the country from a federal prison cell. So Trump's not dropping out of the race, so DeSantis might as well. DeSantis is now down. He's now down to 15% support. He was at 21 when we spoke to you last. He's now at 15%. So as a political campaign, Trump is only benefiting from this. But as a man, he is actually facing probably the most severe. I mean, I'm in a death penalty state, as you were talking about earlier. Yeah. It's like, I don't think that Trump is going to suffer the death penalty, but they are looking to imprison him. This current administration is looking to imprison him, or he drops out.
They really want to do that. And finally, because we've got about 30 seconds, Joe Biden, what is he up to?
Well, we're very excited in America because he's been upright now for 18 days. Over 2 weeks now, he's been largely vertical. Okay, our commander-in-chief has been on his feet, and well, okay, we've not followed him everywhere, but yes, he's been standing up straight now without a tumble. He's been tumble-free now for the best part of 2 weeks. So Father's Day is really going with a bit of a celebration here.
Listen, Paul, always a pleasure to talk to you. That's Paul Dudridge. He's the host of the Politics People podcast. Thank you so much for joining me live from LA. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. So much more still to come in the next hour, so stay tuned. Don't forget to get in touch, gbviews@gbnews.com, or tweet me at gbnews. Good afternoon, I'm Nana Akua. Welcome on board. Now, for the next hour, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. In a few moments' time, I'll be joined by my mystery celebrity guest, who is famed for being a glamour model. Stay tuned, we'll find out more whether you've worked out who she is. Then on the way, the Great British Debate, I'm asking who is to blame for the soaring mortgage rates. But first, let's get your latest news headlines.
Good afternoon. Coming up to 1 minute past 5, I'm Ray Addison in the GB Newsroom. Our top story. The Met Police says it's aware of new footage showing Conservative staff partying during lockdown and joking about COVID restrictions and is considering it. Michael Gove, the Levelling Up Secretary, has apologised, describing the behaviour as unacceptable. In the footage obtained by the Mirror, Tory staff can be seen ignoring social distancing rules imposed by the Conservative government during the height of the pandemic. 2 of the 24 people at that Christmas party were later named in Boris Johnson's resignation honours list. Mr Gove told us disciplinary action has already been taken.
The reason why those steps were taken was to reduce the spread of the disease, in order to make sure that the pressures on the NHS were manageable, in order to make sure that we could treat people who were very ill. So, again, the actions here are deeply distressing, and I can only apologise to people that individuals behaved in this way. My understanding is that there was an investigation into the party when the photograph emerged, and people were disciplined.
MPs will debate any possible punishment for Boris Johnson tomorrow after he was found to have misled Parliament over Partygate. The Privileges Committee recommended that the former Prime Minister should face a 90-day suspension had he not already resigned in advance of that judgment. Now, it's understood that his supporters are being encouraged to abstain, but former Brexit Secretary David Davis told Camilla Tominey he will support the committee, saying its findings are clear.
One of the things about Parliament is it's the highest court in the land.
Yeah.
That creates a problem when you're coming to privileges. What's that problem? It's like having a trial in a village. Everybody knows everybody.
Yeah.
Nobody is entirely unbiased.
How do they know his own mind at the time?
They don't have to. They don't, what they know is what he knows.
Yeah.
If you go to a party, you know it was a party. You don't need an advisor to tell you.
Nicola Sturgeon continues to maintain her innocence after being questioned by police investigating SNP finances last weekend. Scotland's former First Minister spoke as she returned home for the first time since being arrested and released without charge.
You know, I can't say very much just now. What I will say is reiterate the statement I issued last Sunday. I am certain that I have done nothing wrong. I intend to be back in Parliament in the early part of the week. I'll make myself available for questions then, obviously within the constraints that I'm referring to right now. For now, I intend to go home, catch up with some family. I know I'm a public figure, I accept what comes with that, but I'm also a human being that's entitled to a bit of privacy.
Well, Rishi Sunak is facing a 4th by-election following the resignation of a former Tory MP. David Warburton, who had the Tory whip suspended last April, has stepped down from his Somerton and Frome seat following accusations of sexual misconduct and cocaine use. He's the 4th Conservative MP in 8 days to resign, following announcements by Boris Johnson, Nigel Adams and Nadine Dorries. The number of migrants entering the UK in small boats via the English Channel so far this year has surpassed 10,000. According to Home Office figures, 374 people were detected making that journey yesterday. Crossings have increased as the weather improves, but it's still below the equivalent number at this point last year. Almost 46,000 migrants crossed the Channel in 2022. The UK has pledged an extra £16 million to boost Ukraine's cyber defences. That's in addition to £6.35 million promised last year. The government says it's to help Ukraine better defend its critical infrastructure from Russian attacks. The Prime Minister will use a summit this week to call on investors and businesses to step up their support for the country's economic recovery. It comes as Ukraine continues its counter-offensive in the south and east of the country. Thunder, lightning and heavy rain are moving across the UK, leading to concerns of flash flooding. The Met Office is predicting wind and hail with a yellow weather warning for thunderstorms across the majority of England, Wales and Northern Ireland. That's until midnight tonight. It could lead to a month's worth of rain falling in just a few hours. It's the result of recent warm weather with temperatures in the mid to high 20s. And Prince William has vowed to tackle homelessness by building social housing on his own land. The Prince of Wales told The Times that ending the plight of hidden homelessness in the UK has been his lifelong ambition. He's expressed frustration at the government, councils and charities, who he says are managing homelessness rather than preventing it. Many of the details of the 5-year plan are set to be announced next month. This is GB News. We'll bring you more as it happens. Now let's get back to Nana.
Thank you, Ray. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua, and for the next hour, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. Joining me today is author and broadcaster Christine Hamilton, and also broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly. Still to come every Sunday at 5, I'm joined by a celebrity, a former MP or someone who's had an extremely interesting career. To take a look at life after the job, we talk highs, lows and lessons learned and what comes next on the outside. And today, I'm joined by a very special guest. Now, she is the queen of reality TV who has rubbed shoulders with Prince Harry and is also famed for being a glamour model. She's also very vocal during the Agatha Christie scandal, if you remember that. Then up next, the Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking who is to blame for the soaring mortgage rates. Interest rates have drastically risen to 4.5%, with many anticipating it could reach 6% by the end of the year. That could mean home buyers could see their borrowing power drastically reduced by some £77,000. But who is to blame for all of this? Email gbviews@gbnews.com or tweet me at GBNews. But before we move on and have a look and find out who my mystery guest is, I thought I wanted to bring this story to your attention. It's about a mother of 3 who's been jailed for carrying out an abortion on her baby, and it was highlighted in British law that she terminated the pregnancy at around about 32 weeks. Now, thousands of abortion rights activists have staged a show of support over the weekend after the mother took abortion pills after the 24-week legal limit. So she took those pills, she aborted the child at about 32 to 34 weeks. So should there actually be a legal limit? So let's see what my panel make of that. Author and broadcaster Christine Hamilton and also Danny Kelly, journalist and broadcaster. I had to add that in. Danny, so what do you think of this story? I wrote about it in the Daily Mail.
If I may just say, what a thoroughly interesting article you wrote in your brand new column. And I wasn't aware of your personal investment in abortion. And because you've written about it, it's OK if I speak about it. I know that you were torn at one point about whether to terminate a child, and it was unexpected. So I can't possibly put myself in a woman's shoes as to when or whether there is a correct time or decision to make. I can only listen to your words and then sort of form some sort of judgment from your words. That woman must have been going through some incredible mental and emotional turmoil. At the court case, the judge understood and recognised how upset and devastated she was. That was taken into account. There are people who are pro-life. I understand that 32 weeks, I think it was.
32 weeks.
That's like 7 months.
Well, yeah, it's almost 8 months. months. It's a fully formed baby.
Of course. And so I'm trying to visualise now, had that child been delivered and then was to have been killed, then that would be murder. The only difference between murder and this case of, I'm not sure what the offence was the fact that the child was still in the mother's womb. And that is such an interesting point in law, I believe. That's something that is a developed baby. Lots of people listening...
live outside the womb, very likely.
Of course, there'll be people listening and watching the telly and listening to the radio right now who had deliveries less than that, and there'll be people who were delivered at less than that. And it's such an interesting, I think, and such an interesting line in the sand, that once you're out of the body, it's murder. If you're still in the body, it's not.
Christine?
Well, I agree with everything you've said. And apparently this lady, Carla Foster, was prosecuted under an 1861 Offences Against the Persons Act, which the 1967 Abortion Act failed to change. So it's a completely archaic act. But I agree with you. I think what she did, of course she must have been in a terrible state. It's difficult to imagine the agonies she was going through. But what she did was clearly wrong. That child almost certainly would have been able to survive outside the womb. And I think if you just say, well, never mind, dear, just don't do it again, that doesn't send out the right message. And I think there's got to be a cut-off. You can't just say you can abort whenever you like. You can't. And I think this case proves that. If they've tried to get the number of weeks so that if a fetus is capable of living outside the womb, then you do not abort it. And I do support this. I think it's right. Terrible for her, and she apparently has mental health problems and 3 children, one of whom is special needs. Of course, all the knock-on effects of that are horrific, and social services will have to pick up all the pieces. But we cannot allow that sort of behaviour to go unpunished.
I think
However
so,
tough and hard it sounds, we cannot.
Because to me, that is actually murder.
It is
the
murder.
child was perfectly fine, and then she has nightmares of seeing this baby because she had to deliver it. I don't know what she thought would happen if you kill the child. It's got to come out. So you're actually going to have to deliver it like it would be a baby, a living baby. So why not wait a few more weeks and deliver it and put it up for adoption, or allow it to live? But why kill it? That's the thing I
She
can't...
did kill it. She
killed
did
it.
kill
I
it.
can't contend with that.
She killed a baby.
24 weeks. 24 weeks is the cut-off.
Yeah, this was 32.
This was 32. 32, between 32 and 34, so it could have been further along. It's terrible, terrible. Keep your thoughts coming on that. I'd love to hear what you think and your views on that. gbviews@gbnews.com, or tweet me at gbnews. Now, though, it is, of course, time for Outside. Now, I have a very special guest, a mystery guest joining me, someone who is known for her captivating presence, unfiltered opinions, no, not me, I know, and a personality that always leaves a lasting impression. You may recognise her from the glamorous world of modelling, her appearances on popular reality shows, including I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here and Big Brother, as well as her outspokenness on various platforms. According to reports, she fell in a bush with none other than Prince Harry, following a night out on the town. All right. She's married to a footballer Tom Williams, who used to play for Peterborough, and they have 2 sons. I have the pleasure of welcoming, and I know you've probably worked it out, someone who knows how to make a statement without saying a word. Can you guess who it is? It is, of course, the fabulous model and television and media personality, Nicola McLean. Nicola, nice to see you. How are you? Are you good?
I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, very good, very good. Now, last time we were on a panel, I think it was on a Jeremy Vine show, where we totally agreed with the whole death penalty thing. It's come back again. Before we get into you, I just wanted to... Well, I was talking about this piece that I wrote a little while ago about this woman who terminated a baby at 32 weeks. I just wondered what... You're a mother, you've got children, what your thoughts were on it.
I'm so glad you asked me, because while I was watching your debate, I'm like, I really want to debate this. I think it's so shocking that everyone's going, oh, we're going back 100 years. We're trying to take away women's rights. No, I'm fine with abortion. I'm fine with abortion. I had one myself at 17, and it was the right thing to do when the baby, or not the baby, the fetus wasn't formed. This woman has committed murder, and I'm shocked that her sentence was so low.
I'm with you on that. I couldn't believe that so low. You had to deliver a stillborn child, which must have been horrendous. Why not deliver the baby alive?
same as killing a child.
Exactly.
Like, I'm just shocked by, you know, the PC world we're living in, where everyone's going, oh, poor her. Well, no, I feel sorry for this baby that was, you know, the baby was fully formed. I'm shocked. I wasn't expecting to speak about it. I'm glad you asked me, Nana. As always, I know that, you know, we have quite similar views. I'm just shocked about this, and we're not going back. And I'm pro-choice and I'm pro-women's rights. But the fact of the matter is, there has to be legal limits of abortion. With the baby is fully formed inside of you. It's a baby. You've murdered a baby. I'm just so shocked.
Yeah, I mean, I struggled to get my head around it. That's why I had to write about it and I had to ask you about it. I thought you might think similarly to me. But Nicola, you are known for being outspoken, and I love the fact that you're that way. Now, throughout your career, you've also been known for your candidness and fearlessness about all the things you've been through. Talk to me about you, your upbringing, and what it was like for you growing up. I mean, where were you born?
So I was born in North London on a council estate, one that you probably wouldn't visit now and be safe. It was fine. I mean, I didn't have a wonderful childhood, but it's something that I don't speak about because it's not just my childhood, it's my sister's and also it's my parents. So it's not something that I talk about, but it's definitely the reason why I am feisty and outspoken. I think that everyone deserves a voice.
So talk to me about the things that have happened in your career that have taken you to the direction as to where you are now, because you're also a prominent advocate for mental health awareness. Can you share some of your insights into your own life, your journey, and what brought you to look into that sort of area?
Yeah, definitely. So I became a glamour model really, really young. 16, I was on the front cover of the Daily Star in my underwear. I was still at school, which obviously probably wouldn't be allowed now, but I had a wonderful time. Don't get me wrong. There was times where it was tough, but I definitely am so proud of my journey. But I also developed an eating disorder very young, at like 11. So I first remember making myself sick at 11, and I had very bad anorexia and bulimia for many years. So I like to speak about it. I think it's important that if I speak about it, someone might recognise the things that they're doing. Disordered eating's huge. And then I was diagnosed with adult ADHD and medicated, and I've been eating disorder free since then. So I think it's important that we speak about misdiagnosis in especially females, because we mask so much. So I'm here to speak about it.
Do you think that your ADHD, because of that sort of behaviour pattern in your mind, was a thing that led you to become anorexic and have eating disorders? Or was there something that somebody said or did to you that then made you think, oh, well, I'm just not going to eat now?
No, I definitely think that ADHD was a huge driving force in my anorexia and bulimia. I think that if you look at a lot of anorexic girls in particular, they will probably have autism or ADHD, and it's just a misdiagnosis. I mean, obviously, glamour modelling made it difficult for my body image, for sure. But I was anorexic and bulimic before that. So I think that my gigantic implants was a result of glamour modelling, but not the anorexic and bulimia. I think that was undiagnosed ADHD.
And with the implants, do you regret them now? I mean, have you had them taken out, made smaller, or you still got them?
I don't regret them. I do regret them. That's wrong. I regret them because they cause me horrific back pain. But no, I haven't had them out. I feel like it's my identity, which is really weird. I'm sure therapy would be able to. But yeah, I feel like it's sort of become my thing, you know, Nicola McLean, the blonde hair and the big boobs. So no, I haven't had them taken out. But do I regret them? Probably, because I have a really bad back.
Oh, you've done quite a bit of reality TV. It's been quite significant in your career. What would you say the most sort of poignant moments? Is there one moment that stands out for you? And are there any lessons that you learned from your experiences there?
Yeah, for sure. So I think The Jungle, So I'm a Celebrity, for me was huge. When I got it, it was massive. And I did the eating trial, which I know everyone goes, oh, I could never do it. But I think it's probably the best thing that you can do to prove yourself, because it's the one that people remember. And I did it really well. So I'm really proud of myself. The Jungle was huge. Big Brother, I love. I'm a huge fan. But I think that I'm definitely not suited to Big Brother, because it's very anxiety induced. Like you never know what's happening next. And the tannoy comes on, this is Big Brother. And it was a lot for me. And, undiagnosed ADHD and my anxieties, it was a lot for me. I drank too much in there, and I didn't probably act the way that I would do if it was now. But I'm not cross. I did well. And listen, I can do the school run every day, and I'm at home. I don't have to go and do a 9 to 5. So I'm proud of myself. But there's things that obviously I think, oh God, I wish I didn't do that, but that's okay. TikTok's not great for someone like me.
We all do stuff like that we regret. Looking ahead, though, you've done so many things, so you've achieved so many goals. I mean, right now, does your reality exceed your dreams? So in your mind, did you think that you'd be where you are now? Because you've done pretty well.
Do you know what? It's really weird, because when the first I'm a Celebrity came on TV, I said to my mum all these years ago in our council flat, I said to her, I'll be on that show one day. I just knew it. I really believe in thinking something and it will happen. I tell my kids this. So no, I think I've got a lot more to do. I really want to do Dancing on Ice, and I know I'll do it one day. I feel like you just got to go for it, and you can do it.
That's the one show I don't think I'll do. I don't fancy that one. I don't like the headbanger. The look of that puts me off. But finally, I cannot let you go without asking you about Prince Harry and the rumble in the bush. What happened there? What happened?
No, it definitely was a rumble in the bush. So my husband said to me, oh, we've got a garden party to go to today. And I'm thinking, really? Didn't tell me, makeup's not done, hair's not done, nails look bad. And he was like, yeah, it's my friend's 30th birthday. Turned up and the security was like, you've never ever seen in your life. I was like, someone really famous must be here, because this is ridiculous. Had to hand over your phones and blah, blah, blah. Ended up, Prince Harry was there. I got really, really drunk and fell in a bush. He was a nice guy. He helped me out. My dress was slightly stained, and, as I say, don't drink.
Yes, don't drink, for goodness sake. Well, listen, it's so good to talk to you. Nicola, thank you so much for joining me. Really good to talk to you. I think we've just lost you there, but just at the very end anyway. Is she still there? Nicola? Unfortunately, she's gone. We've lost her. But listen, stay tuned there, because we've got loads more to come. That's the fabulous Nicola McLean. She was my outside guest as a model and a TV personality. But right now, on the way, the Great British Debate, I'm asking who is to blame for the soaring mortgage rates. Interest rates have drastically risen to 4.5%, with many anticipating that they could reach as high as 6% by the end of the year, which means some home buyers and home owners would have to would be spending a lot more money. But who is to blame for all of this? Stay tuned, don't go anywhere.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard. We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often there will be difficult stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now? Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. It's just coming up to 26 minutes after 5 o'clock, and it's time now for our Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, who is to blame for the soaring mortgage rates? Now, the Bank of England is expected to increase its key interest rate next week for the 13th time in a row. Now, that's according to the think tank Resolution Foundation. This means that people trying to remortgage their homes will have to pay £2,900 a year more than from 2024 onwards. So that's roughly £200 a month. So by the end of the year, interest rates could reach 6%, which means that their borrowing power could be reduced by around about £77,000, making it far more difficult for people to get onto the housing ladder. Now, earlier this week, Chancellor Jeremy Hunt has said that there is no alternative to lifting the rates. But is that really the solution? Rising inflation and the war in Ukraine has also meant that household bills have drastically increased. So is the housing bubble also about to burst? So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking who or what is to blame for the soaring mortgage rates? I'm joined now by Matthew Stadlen, political commentator, Julie Ford, property expert, and Anna McGovern, political commentator, and Julian Jessup, an independent economist. Well, I'm going to start with you, Julie Ford. You're a property expert. I want to know your views on this. The interest rates are going up, mortgage rates are going up. What do you see as a progression with regard to the housing market?
First of all, I don't think we're going to see a big housing crash. At the end of the day, people are still going to need property, so we're not going to see the crashes that we've seen in history. So I don't think there needs to be a big panic. Yes, absolutely, we're going to see the interest rate rise, I think, on the 22nd of June. And there are predictions that that's going to go up again and probably see the highest rate by December. Where that leaves people with interests on their mortgage, it's tricky. And the problem is, with the interest rates on everything increasing, the cost of food, the energy prices, it's a knock-on effect. There's nothing that's going to happen immediately that's going to resolve the situation. We've got to this point over a level of time, and unfortunately it's going to be a level of time that's going to have to bring us back down as well.
Julian Jessup, I want to ask you with regard to the... Is this really the right way forward, to increase the interest rates to curb inflation? Because that seems to be the reason why they're doing it, right?
Yeah, well, I think the first thing to say is that interest rates are rising almost everywhere around the Western world. So, in fact, interest rates have risen even slightly more in the United States than they have here. So this isn't just a British phenomenon. That said, if I were on the Monetary Committee of the Bank of England, I would vote to leave rates on hold this week. And that's partly because of the impact on the housing market. It does take a while for past increases in interest rates to feed through because a lot of people are on fixed rate mortgages. But a lot of those mortgages are going to come up for renewal pretty soon. That's going to have a really big impact on people's spending power.
What about some of the banks, though? Because even though they're not passing on the savings, so the saving rates are still staying low, Julian. What about that? Why are they not doing that?
Well, it's a complicated picture because banks at the end of the day do still have to make money, and they are facing, in some cases, quite big losses on other parts of their investment portfolio. So any bank sitting on a big portfolio of bonds, for example, has actually lost quite a bit of money on that. So I wouldn't focus so much on that. The reality is the mortgage market is highly competitive. There are an awful lot of offers out there. So I think it's unlikely that banks are making big profits on the back of that alone.
Matthew Stadlin, who's to blame?
Well, before we work out who's to blame, Nana, I think let's just quickly deal with the human side of this story, and that is that millions of people around the country are struggling and will begin to struggle with their mortgages and also with the inflation. So in other words, a lot of households, a lot of families are being hit round the head twice. Well, one by the cost of living, inflation, and then because mortgages are going up, because interest rates are going up, they're being hit in that direction as well. A lot of people haven't had the full force of this yet because of certain types of mortgages, fixed mortgages, expiring in the coming months and years. Now, that's not just a ticking time bomb for people and their budgets, it's a ticking time bomb politically. So let's move to the politics. Whether you blame Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng, and a lot of people will, whether you or not you blame them, the vast majority of people, I suspect, asking themselves the question when we go to the polls next year or in January of 2025, will ask themselves, am I better or worse off than I was in 2019, or indeed back in 2010 when the Tories first got into power? The answer, I think, almost unanimously will be, we are worse off. So whether or not you decide to blame the government, actually, that's what I think people will do.
Anna McGovern.
No, I have to absolutely echo everything Matthew's saying. I'm a young person myself. I've graduated university quite recently. And, I will one day want to own my own home, as will many of my friends. And I think it's absolutely terrifying what we're seeing at the moment, especially with the cost of housing going up. And we're not actually building enough housing either. And yet a lot of, illegal immigrants are coming in and taking up a lot of the housing. And we're not keeping up with demand. I really think that we should be turning the blame on the government. The Conservative Party, they're meant to be the party of home ownership, and yet so many people are struggling to actually be able to afford to own their own home. So I think when it does come to the general election, a lot of fingers will be pointed at the government.
But what about some of the things that are happening? I mean, as Julian pointed out, interest rates are going up everywhere. This isn't just in this country, Julian. I mean, you said that, didn't you, Julian?
Yes, that's right. But if I were to look specifically at the UK, I think I would still end up blaming the Bank of England. Ultimately, it's the Bank of England's job to control the overall level of inflation. So things like food and energy prices might be influenced by global factors, but we do have a higher inflation rate than many other countries. I think the Bank of England has to take more than a fair share of blame for that. I'd also blame the government, though, particularly for the problems in the housing market, because one reason why people have taken out lots of these short-term fixed-rate mortgages is that that's the only way they could afford to buy houses, because they're in such short supply that the prices are ridiculously high. So it's a combination of the Bank of England being behind the game on controlling inflation, and also the government not allowing enough houses to be built.
Final word to you, Julie Ford.
Yeah, I mean, I echo everything that's been said by the panel today, but I think that the main key here is people will always want to buy homes. Whether they're going to be able to afford them is going to be an issue, and I don't think it's at this point the government should be stepping in with any grants or funding like they did during COVID. This is something that needs to be sorted out by the rate of inflation coupled with, as has already been said, the Bank of England base rate.
All right, so if I was to ask you, each of you, who do you blame for this? Matt Stadlin, in a word, who do you blame? Is there anyone to blame for this inflation, in your view?
I can't answer it in a word, but the government is partly to blame.
The government partly. Julie Ford.
Yeah, partly to blame, with history being a big factor in that.
Anna McGovern?
Yeah, absolutely agree. A main emphasis on the Conservative Party.
And who do you blame?
Well, ultimately, it's the Bank of England's job to control inflation, and they have failed.
Thank you very much. Thank you for all of you, Matthew Stadlin, Julie Ford, Anna McGovern and Julian Jessup. Thank you for your thoughts. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. Who do you blame? That's the question. I'd love to hear your thoughts. That's on the way. It is our Great British Debate this hour. You'll hear the thoughts of my panel, broadcaster and author Christine Hamilton, and also broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly. But first, let's get your latest news headlines.
34 minutes past 5, I'm Ray Addison, and our top story this hour. The Met Police says it's aware of new footage showing Conservative staff partying during lockdown and joking about COVID restrictions, and is considering it, they say. In the footage obtained by the Mirror, Tory staff can be seen ignoring social distancing rules imposed by the Conservative government at the height of the pandemic. 2 of the 24 people at that Christmas party were later named in Boris Johnson's resignation honours list. Michael Gove, the Levelling Up Secretary, has apologised and described the behaviour as unacceptable. Nicola Sturgeon continues to maintain her innocence after being questioned by police investigating SNP finances last weekend. Scotland's former First Minister spoke as she returned home for the first time since being arrested and released without charge.
You know, I can't say very much just now. What I will say is reiterate the statement I issued last Sunday. I am certain that I have done nothing wrong. I intend to be back in Parliament in the early part of the week. I'll make myself available for questions then, obviously within the constraints that I'm referring to right now. For now, I intend to go home, catch up with some family. I know I'm a public figure, I accept what comes with that, but I'm also a human being that's entitled to a bit of privacy.
More than 10,000 people have been detected crossing the English Channel in small boats so far this year. Home Office figures have confirmed that crossings have increased because of the recent good weather, with more than 2,500 making the journey in the past week. However, the total number of crossings so far this year remains below the equivalent number at this time last year. Right, you can get more on all of those stories by visiting our website, gbnews.com. Now let's get straight back to Nana.
Thank you, Ray. Still to come, Greenwich Council has sparked outrage with plans to ban ice cream vans from more than 30 roads this summer. Yes, you heard it here first. We'll be discussing that. But before, and up next, it's the Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking who is to blame for soaring mortgage rates. Stay tuned.
First and foremost, I'm a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing. We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The people's channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com? You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, we are the People's Channel. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. It's now time for our Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, who is to blame for the soaring mortgage rates? Now, the Bank of England is expected to increase its key interest rate next week for a 13th time. According to the Resolution Foundation, this means that people trying to remortgage their homes will have to pay £2,900 a year more from 2024 onwards. Now, that is roughly £200 a month. So by the end of the year, interest rates could reach 6%, meaning that their borrowing power could be reduced by around about £77,000, which is making it far more difficult for people to get onto the housing ladder. Earlier this week, Chancellor Jeremy Hunt said that there is no alternative to lifting the rates. But is this really the only solution? Rising inflation and the war in Ukraine have also meant household bills have drastically increased. So is the housing bubble about to burst? So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking who or what is to blame for the soaring mortgage rates. Well, joining me now, my panel, author and broadcaster Danny Kelly, and also Christine Hamilton, broadcaster and author. You're not an author. You've never written anything, Danny, before.
I've written a cookbook. I've written a cookbook.
What, something
at the BBC.
Have you?
Yeah, I've written a cookbook, yeah.
It was just in the BBC. He's done it.
Well, it was just like a novelty thing, just when I got the main gig. They said, Dan, you're an ex-chef, write a cookbook and we'll get a bit of publicity.
you were an ex-chef.
So you wrote a cookbook?
Yeah,
or
wrote
just a couple of menus?
Yeah, but you need to understand some of the dishes with things, just creations like baked beans with crisps and, cheese in it. It was just a bit of fun.
How many pages?
I think there were about 28 recipes.
Baked beans
with crisps in it. It's just a bit of fun, to get some publicity. But I am an author of a cookbook. In fact, between the three of us, I think I was the first to write a book. Back in your box.
Probably my first was 97.
97? No, you were the first to write.
I think yours is a pamphlet or a leaflet rather than
leaflet,
a book.
if you prefer.
It's a leaflet. It wasn't even a book. It's a leaflet.
I've authored a leaflet then.
Fair enough. All right, so let's... you guys, you've bought houses, haven't you? You've bought homes.
But best thing I ever did, and this is a top tip, if you've got a few quid at the end of the month, overpay. Thankfully, I pay...
Overpay your mortgage.
Overpay your mortgage, you reduce your debt dramatically. Honestly, you reduce the amount of years, and if you overpay £1,000 at the end of the month, that £1,000 comes off, not the balloon with all the interest, it comes off the actual debt. So if you've got £500,000 mortgage, that £1,000 makes it 499,990, or whatever the maths is. Overpay. Liz Truss, we cannot deny it. Yes, there are global inflation issues. Yes, interest rates are going through the roof because of that idiot Putin and his fat Belarusian mate. We get all of that. But Liz Truss, last year, this terrible 44 days of her leadership and that awful kamikaze-style budget, and the Bank of England, the markets reacted negatively. Everything fell through the floor. I'm noticing it as a car dealer as well. The whole game has gone quiet because of the Bank of England interest rates. It's a global thing, but we can't let her off the hook for that terrible budget.
Do you really think it was that bad? I think she had the right idea.
Yeah, but the markets just collapsed. It might be a good idea, but the markets didn't think it was a good idea.
But they just didn't like her, really. I think this was more of a, I don't know, it felt like more like a globalist kind of coup. They wanted their man to be at the top. To me, it just felt like there were other pressures, and I still think that interest rates would have gone up anyway, and she was a good scapegoat for the Tory party.
Markets aren't interested in personalities.
No, I think they might well be. I don't think that's true. Christine, it's all about confidence, so they are.
Going back to what Danny said about mortgages, I mean, when interest rates are low, mortgages, it's a great way to make money, frankly, because you can borrow a lot of money at a very small rate, and then when interest rates go up, you make it back on the property. So it entirely depends on interest rates. I wonder how many members of the Cabinet, for example, have a mortgage. Probably not many. It's left for one rule for them and one rule for us. But no, people have been left, absolutely. They're going to be in terrible. We're going to have negative equity fairly soon. I blame the Bank of England. I think Andrew Bailey, fair and square, should take a big share of the blame for not increasing interest rates when he could have done. If we'd had a gradual increase, we wouldn't have had this cliff. Now, it just happens to be 25 years, roughly, to the week when Gordon Brown, who was Tony Blair's Chancellor, called the then Governor of the Bank of England, Eddie George, to the Treasury, or to number 11, and said, I'm going to give the Bank of England independence and control over interest rates. And Andrew Bailey was there. He was a sort of junior. I'm not quite sure exactly what his title was. So 25 years ago was when the Bank of England were handed this responsibility, and I think they have a lot to blame for. Andy Haldane, who was the chief economist at the bank until relatively recently, he wanted to increase interest rates, but he's been asleep at the wheel. Of course, it's Ukraine as well. And we've got this terrible business with the dam, the Kasakova Dam. Which has now destroyed so much, because energy prices and food prices are the two big things that fuel inflation. And both of those are very badly affected by the Ukraine-Russia.
May I address one of your questions now?
Very briefly.
Is the market going to collapse? No, because the tenet of supply and demand, there is still more supply. Sorry, there is more demand than supply. So the answer is no.
But it also depends if people start defaulting on their mortgages.
That poor girl.
If people start defaulting on their mortgages, then we have a similar... Do you remember the subprime fiasco that we had in 2000? I think it was 2009.
That may be an influence.
You've got to be careful.
That young girl on your panel, I mean, good luck to her. I hope she does get her house one day. But
she lives in a lovely house as it is. I don't know who's it
does
is.
she?
I think that might be a bar somewhere. She's out there in a bar somewhere.
Based on what she said, it's not her house.
Well, listen, this show is nothing without you. Let's welcome our great British voices on their opportunity to be on the show and tell us what they think about the topics we're discussing. I've got 4 of you. Let's start with Jackie Sampson from St Albans. Jackie, what do you think about this? Hello, nice.
Well, I think it goes back much further than the recent years. I think personally the house price has been artificially high for too long. We had cheap credit for too many years. People got suckered into a false sense of security, got greedy. Everybody thought they were going to make money, and through economic history there's boom and bust. I mean, the Bank of England, they are not elected, they're not even bankers, they're economists, so they react to their policy. But I think there's a lot more involved than one set of people. Can't blame the government, Bank of England. I think this is inflationary pressure, and it goes much higher up. I'm a bit of a conspiracy theorist. I think there's reasons why it's been engineered to bring us where we are. COVID didn't help. all the cost of living thing, the inflationary pressure means they're keeping the rates high. And I think, don't shoot me down, we need a bit of a reset. It's been artificially high for too long.
David Baum, thank you for that, Jackie.
Hello, Nana. Thank you for having me on. I agree partially with Jackie, but actually I'm old enough to remember when interest rates were 15%. But also, we had this crazy situation where the world markets nearly died because of poor decisions of the toxic mortgages. Then we had the price coming down, the interest rates coming down because they had to do something to regulate the market. And then everyone complained there was no interest for the savers. But what about the savers? The people who need the money to save. I think the Bank of England have been inept. They've allowed interest rates. They have no idea what to do with the policy. It's stick a finger in the air and say, we're going to charge this month. The lenders are loving every minute of it because they can recover a lot of the money they lost going back to 2008 and the tragedies that happened then. They made the mistakes, they caused the problems, we're still paying for those idiots.
Wow. Well, David, I've got to move on. Let's go to Miranda Richardson, not the Miranda Richardson, but Miranda Richardson in Northampton. Miranda, he's cut into your time, so you've got a bit less.
Yeah, I think I actually party a little bit with Jackie there. I do think that there are several parties to blame. And I think one of the aspects that we really are losing sight of a little bit is the amount, you mentioned it earlier, people defaulting on their mortgages. As the interest rates get higher and people are having to remortgage now because they've come to an end of a term, if they've defaulted, the likelihood is they won't be able to remortgage money in that property or not, because the lending restrictions have become so much tighter that we're then going to be in this avenue where they're going to have to sell and make whatever they can and downsize, and we're then going to be in this spiral of people losing their homes.
Yeah,
I think
it might bring the house prices down, Miranda. Let's get to Lee Webb because we're running out of time. Lee, you've got 30 seconds.
Yeah, I think we are here where we are now, largely because of COVID. We've made 400, 500 million pounds extra. That's what we're printed. To control that inflation, we have to use interest rates. And I think that is the biggest effect that we've had, why mortgage rates are so high at the moment. The house prices have already started coming down. You've only got to look at some of the websites that do the house sales, and it's all a little red arrow going down.
Well, that's the way it looks like it's going to be for Tory party. Well, listen, thank you so much for that, Lee in Bedford, also Miranda in Northamptonshire, David in Watford, and Jackie in St Albans. Right, quickly, let's move on to a story that caught my eye. Greenwich Council has sparked outrage with plans to ban ice cream vans from more than 30 roads this summer. Ice cream vans keep their engines running even while at a standstill to power their freezers, causing concerns about the amount of pollution that they produce. A planning representative has also suggested that the use of the vehicle would clutter the views of heritage sites. Let's see what Christine Hamilton and Danny Kelly make of that.
I mean, pick me up from the floor, for heaven's sake. If we're going to start banning ice cream vans, I mean, parents used to tell their children that when they ring their bell, it means they've run out of ice cream. But unbelievable.
Don't you start yours like that. Don't you start yours and pick me up from the floor.
Nothing puts me off more than a fat bloke picking his nose and then picking up a cone, and then handling change. They're most unhygienic. These are the people serving the ice cream. And as for the vans, they're horrible. Big, filthy old diesel things. Horrible, but I love them.
Exactly. Is this plate 1999 or is it 99?
99,
99.
Yes. Wow.
Well, listen, now it's time for Supplement Sunday. This is where the panel and I discuss some of the news stories that caught their eye. Joining me, author and broadcaster Christine Hamilton and broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly. Danny, we're going to start with you. Yours is about a very expensive rainbow crossing.
Ever wondered how much these stupid rainbow crossings are at pedestrian crossings? Well, £48,174 was for a series of them somewhere in this capital of ours, London. Hounslow, is that near here? Is that near here? 50k. So next time you see your council blowing a load of dough, you know how much it costs. 50k for a series of rainbow crossings, please.
Now, Christine, you're one now.
Well, if that makes you cry, this should make you weep. The BBC, paid for by us, the licence payer, are going to send 1,000 people to cover Glastonbury.
What?
1,000 people. They will have it. 1,000 people. I mean, Glastonbury isn't exactly majority interest, is it? It's in 2009 they sent 415, so this is more than twice as many. that was 22 fewer than the number they flew out to the Beijing Olympics. I mean, for goodness sake, 1,000 people covering Glastonbury.
I can respond to that. The reason is that the BBC need to be relevant to the next future generation of licence fee payers. No, it's true. It's true. That's the next generation of licence fee payers. They don't care about middle-aged people like us.
There won't be a licence fee.
They don't care about us.
When they're a licence fee, Danny.
4 or 5-star hotels, 4 of them have been booked for the staff to stay in. I thought the whole point of Glastonbury was a tent.
Well, that's what they should have, and I'd like to see that. And finally, on to my supplement. Notorious grifter Meghan Markle has seemingly found a new way to earn money after her podcast was cancelled. Rumour has it she's about to sign a deal with Dior. Yes, so Meghan Markle may well be doing some Dior stuff. I mean, what do you think about that?
Well, Harry did his little Dior modelling at the coronation, didn't
you talk about it
Within
soon,
seconds, before the coronation service was over, Dior were tweeting about, doesn't he look lovely?
Well, your clip got over 1 million views, that bit.
Did it?
Thing. I thought, it might be
How do you know that?
Because I looked on Twitter, it's out there.
Listen, I haven't got a problem with Harry and Meghan, and if she can earn 200 grand by saying something online, then good for her. I know that the podcast has failed and collapsed, and apparently they've got to give a load of dough back to Netflix. But look, you know, I don't have anything evil or bad intention to say about them.
But all I say is this: if somebody has a fragrance and they smell a certain way and they're not very nice people, then to me it's a bit of a stench, and I won't be going there, frankly.
I think she's going to be modelling the clothes, not the perfume.
Well, I won't wear that either. There you go. How's that? Right.
Yeah. I won't be wearing them.
Allegedly.
Labour as bad as the Tories? Our Twitter poll says 79% of you say yes, 21% of you say no. Thank you so much to my wonderful panels. I've got the fabulous Christine Hamilton. Christine, thank you so much.
Always a pleasure, Nana.
And also the wonderful Danny Kelly. I know, I'm big. We're
off to the pub now.
No, I'm stalling for time. That's the only reason you got all that. And a huge thank you to you at home for your company. It's always a pleasure, as ever. Look, I'm looking forward to seeing you next week at the same time of 3 o'clock. Make sure you join me there. Have a fabulous week. Take care of yourselves. And don't forget, download the GB app and watch this show back on Catch Up.
Hello there, I'm Jonathan Vautry here with your latest GB News weather forecast provided by the Met Office. It is an unsettled end to the weekend for many of us, all thanks to an area of low pressure that is centred just to the west of the UK. We do have thunderstorm and rain warnings in force across many areas. There could be some torrential downpours of rain, thunderstorms, lightning and hail possible over the coming few hours.